I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, but like when an old man comes up to me and they're like, I like Shitfire because you're taking punk back to its roots. I'm like, fuck. Well, then I got to do something different, man, because that's like literally the last thing I want, you know? Like that's boring to me. I feel like for so long, everything I was writing, I tried to be so big about. I tried to write about such bigger than me subjects, and you know, Kyle very often, the other main lyric writer, he's always like, you should just write personal shit, like you're good at it. And I think I've always been like, no, I don't want to, you know, be vulnerable in that way. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh my god, this vulnerability is the most fun, you know?
Yeah.
I hope that in a roundabout way I'm getting what you're picking up. I think that there's something more than just like a surface level, like this is a melody, because I could write 10 melodies right now that are just fine. And you're going to be like, yeah, that's great. And maybe you'll hum one of them, you know, and then you'll forget it in a couple of days. But there's certain ones that I feel like you can recall from like the first time you ever heard it and you still think about it. And like certain melodies or something are just like, that's like the language of the universe.
Hey everyone, hope you're doing well out there. For those of you who don't already know Cadillac Young, I am so excited for you to get to know him during these next few hours. And for those of you who do know him already, I'm excited for you to get to know him a bit more as we dive deep into some of these old experiences and stories he has to tell. Cadillac is a monolith of compassion and kindness in our city. He invited me to and performed at some of my very first punk shows. And if you ask anybody who knows him, they will say that above all else, he is a great friend. Thank you so much for listening to Conversations with Carswell. This is episode 14 with Cadillac Young. Cadillac Young.
Well, howdy.
You are a musician, guitarist, singer, audio engineer, Twitch streamer, home remodeler, Shively enthusiast.
Very much so.
You performed at my very first local show and made a young, nervous Chris Carswell feel welcome to a new scene and community.
No way.
When asked, those around you overwhelmingly cite your compassion and kindness to others, as well as your work ethic.
Wowza.
Cadillac, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, man.
No, thank you for having me. Since you started doing this, I was like, I hope one day I get asked. This is really cool. So
You're absolutely one of the first people I thought of.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But, so I wanted to first touch on some old venues and some Louisville history from our scene.
Let's do it.
So there's always been a rich and vibrant underground music scene in Louisville, but a lot of those listening didn't have the opportunity to be around for it, really. And I know a lot of people are interested in our city and scene's history, and while some of it has been documented, we didn't exactly have a senior Diablo going to 3 shows a day to document every moment for future generations.
Wish we did.
Right. So can you tell us about some of these old legendary venues, the camp spacemans of their day, and how these DIY spaces shaped you as a musician in person?
Absolutely. First off, you'd mentioned Chestnut House, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's classic. Did you go to Skull Alley?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So you had your Chestnut House, which was arguably one of the most important venues of our younger days. Where was your first show?
It was at Chestnut House.
Was it? Okay, that's what I figured. And I figured we probably talked about it, so it was in there somewhere. Do you remember what show it was?
So I believe it was Pianos Become the Teeth.
Okay, wow, that was your first show. That's cool.
Vader Bomb was opening for them.
Hell yeah.
And at the time, I was young, maybe 15 years old, 14, or I'm not sure how old, but I was driving up and down the street, and this was like before like social media was really popping for like finding shows.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Sometimes you go on forums, or a lot of times just be word of mouth. Like
totally.
you ask a punk kind of deal. And so I just heard it was at Chestnut House. And so I drove up and down Chestnut Street until I saw what looked like could be a show. And they did a good job of concealing it. You know, it's already a busy street, so it's not like, oh, there's a lot of parking over here. It just, but there was a girl at a fold-out table just like this one getting money at a door.
You are brave. You came alone?
I came alone.
Wow. Yeah. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that scene is where you met some of the people that are your best friends to this day. Different people like that. Did you already
not
know
at that show, but after in that era, later on.
That's awesome.
And I remember seeing a bunch of guys, dressed up in like wrestling costumes, and the singer like had a bloody nose because he was punching himself in the face, or like a bassist or somebody also got hit with like the fretboard of a guitar, and it's like these guys fighting each other. Or so it was like I can't imagine a more like deep end throw for like a young person who had like the heaviest band I'd listened to maybe was like I don't know, like Gojira or something. And I was like kind of into that polished metal where it's like, oh wow, they got the tone so perfect.
Right.
And it's just
you're at this house where we're like, I don't care. Let's start playing.
And so and of course like one of my favorite bands was performing that night, and it was such a shock to me, and I fell in love with it immediately, and I felt the camaraderie and the familyness like between everybody there.
That's awesome.
And something really funny I think happened during that show or at a show following that, where there was obviously a noise complaint that had been filed, or somebody called the police, and so we were performing, or they were performing, and everybody went quiet. The owner of the house, just got everybody's attention. It's like, oh, the cops are coming. And we look out and you see, there's 2 police officers walking towards the house. And some hero said, everybody start singing happy birthday. And everybody started singing happy birthday.
Holy
and the
shit.
cops stopped in their tracks. And you could hear them listening. And they're like, oh, and they just walked away. And then as soon as they were gone, rang out again and just continued the show. And
that's awesome.
I was like, that was incredible. You couldn't do that at any other venue, or any other space like that. It was a great story and just a great experience.
Oh man, that house was very important. So like, I don't even know if you really remember. You said you were driving at that time. Skull Alley and that house weren't that far apart. So sometimes we would have a show at Skull Alley and then like, all right, everybody go to Chestnut. We're going to do an after show there. So to me, I'm going to take this off. It keeps hitting the table. And that's going to be annoying when you're mixing. Both of those are maybe the most important venues from our like young times. I mean, I had a whole other era because I'm fucking old. But like when those came around, those were like, the big deal. Because there was a period of a few years where there just wasn't, one, there wasn't a lot of house spots, and 2, there wasn't a lot of good or any DIY venues, which at that point, I don't know how you can edit this to make it, I'm just a yammerer, but when I was younger, I was raised to be DIY, except when you're, young and have less money, you don't call it DIY. Grandpa's like, well, the car broke, I'm going to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of these like ethics built into me that I never associated with punk rock or anything like that. And I remember I booked a show. Well, me and my friend Dan Serkey. Do you know Dan Serkey?
I don't.
Okay. He's still around, but he used to, book shows and come to more shows. He was in that band Fork and Socket, if you remember them.
Oh, yeah.
Got some great stories that just pertain to him in Skull Alley, but I'll stick to this. We booked a show downtown at some church, and I genuinely can't remember the name of it at the time. It probably still exists, but they don't do shows there. And, it was one of those things where it was like, there's nowhere to book shows, so we're just booking it at this church, like this random church has a room they'll let us use. And Jamie from Skull Alley came with Allison, who helped him start it, but shortly after disappeared. They showed up and they said, hey, can we set up a table here? And I was just like, no one's ever done that, but sure. Like, you're not in a band or, you're not performing. They're like, no, we just want to set up a table and like sell zines. And I was like, okay, sure. So they did that. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to open this venue. And I just remember being like, that's so cool. Like, let me get your email address, which back then I feel like that was like, I just got my first Gmail, I was like, let me get your email.
Yeah.
I still use that Gmail. I get 75 spam emails a day, but I got it. I went there a couple of times and I remember I emailed him first, and that's how I knew to go there. And I remember going and being like, this is so important. Like, I just need to be a part of this. And he was like, you want to be the door person? Yeah, sure. Shortly after, Allison kind of dipped for her own reasons. And so, like, I was the door person for a few years, and that molded who I think I am as a person, through the punk rock stuff. It's so fun to be able to, like, just yammer with everybody that comes through. They're forced to yammer with you because they got to hand you money, and just like talk to everybody and be silly and fun. So this does tie in. And again, you can cut all this. I just like talking about it. Dan Serkey, one of my closest friends, I was the button maker at Skull Alley. And I had the button maker at home. I made them for bands and stuff. They paid Skull Alley. That's how we like kept our doors open, was t-shirts and buttons and stuff. But because I had the stuff, sometimes I would just make stupid buttons and I would hand them out when I was doing door. And I made all these buttons with Dan Serkey's face, and they said, fuck Dan Serkey, I heart Dan Serkey, all this stuff. And I was just giving them to everybody that paid to get in. And like for years, I would like meet people in the scene, and we'd get close, and I'd be like, this is Dan Serkey, my friend. And they'd be like, hold on a second. They'd pull out their backpack and be like, I have a fuck you Dan Serkey button, and I never knew who Dan Serkey was. And I was always like, that's my best friend. So yeah, that has nothing to do with anything.
It's awesome that you like guerrilla marketed your friend.
Absolutely. And he was always like, what
did he have
doing?
Like a business or
nothing? It was just Dan Serkey.
So it's like, hey, if you see me around, say what's up.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, he didn't even want the attention, I just gave it to him.
Just starts getting high fives, people buying him drinks at the bar.
Absolutely.
And he's like, why? And they're like, I just feel like I know you from somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, I know that's a little off track, but it's a shining example of how like important spaces like those are and were and are, I guess I should say. Like I met some of my closest friends at Skull Alley, at Chestnut House. My house used to do shows. I don't know if you ever attended any. It was a pretty short period where we did them regularly, and then we like brought it back in like 2017 or something. But
I believe I did.
Oh yeah.
And there was it was like mainly like acoustic acts, or I remember seeing, I think there was like a band, but there was a few acoustic acts, and it was like in a living room kind of.
Oh man.
Maybe I went to some house show with you. You invited me to come by, so I imagine
cool.
It might have been your spot. I came, and the only person I knew was you.
Oh shit.
And
that's awesome.
It was quite a while ago, many years ago.
You've been to my house, of course. Yeah, you have. Mm-hmm. So that's that same house. Do you remember?
Then it wasn't that house.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
So then I know where it was. Did you go see Paul Barabo?
It might have been. I'm not sure.
So Jake Snyder, the lead singer of Mountain of Sleep, he did shows. He lives still to this day, actually, the same house. He lives really close to here. But yeah, he only did acoustic stuff because the neighbors would always call the cops on him. So, back then there was like folk punk bands more regularly. So you could like host a whole show of people playing acoustic. No, my house, we had so many big bands before they were big. Like to this day, like my partner will be like, oh yeah, I remember this year I saw a lot of Spute. And I'll be like, oh yeah, they played in my basement to 35 people,
Wow.
And that happens all the time. Somebody will bring up a band and I'm like, I feel like they played in my basement, and I feel like there was maybe 60 people there, So yeah, I mean, but again, it was a short, maybe like a year that we did stuff. Chestnut ran for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I think, it like started before Skull Alley ended. And then after Skull Alley ended, it became the main spot because there was no other spot. And I mean, every band, big or small, that came through, like that was Bane played there, like I can just think of all these. Terror played there, like these bands that sell out venues in this city that are huge. We're playing this living room that, maybe stuffed 200 people if you were being really dangerous,
Right. Bane, I believe, didn't they play there after Crazy Fest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like the after show.
There's a famous photo from that show.
Awesome. I don't even know which one it is. Are you in it?
No.
Okay.
It's somebody crowd surfing. It's like a dude in his underwear. Only they crowd surfing.
Of course it
was
is.
Great.
Yeah, no, lots of huge bands, played Chestnut. It was awesome. And because it was like, I don't know, it felt like there was like 13 people that lived there. There were like some punk kids, some indie kids, some like train traveling kids. some hardcore kids. Like every night of the week, there was something different happening at that house because there was just like all these different, subgenres of the culture that did their own thing. Mikey lived there. He was a skater, like it was just a really cool spot where maybe it was a hardcore show, but like the indie kid lived in the room next to the room with the show. So he's going to come hang out and he's going to invite his friends. Cause what else do you do on a Tuesday besides hang around,
Yeah.
That was an important spot. I can totally go on more about it. I just don't know if there's a direction I should be hitting. So, I know I tend to ramble.
Oh no, I want to hear it all.
Awesome.
It's cool to hear that people from all sorts of backgrounds, were living in that spot.
Yeah.
Because I remember, and I remember you saying like the hardcore shows being there, and I I remember now it's such a like dug up like an old feeling that's like now so foreign. It's like those were too like scary for me to even think about going to because I was like a kid, and I was like, oh, and it was like such a confined space, and it's like once like but there was like nothing, especially at that age. There's nothing that makes you feel more alive and releases adrenaline more than like when the band rings out and people are just start swinging. Like people 10 years older, 15 years older than you, like swinging their heart. And you're like, I have no idea what's happening right now, but I know I'm scared, but also having a good time.
Yeah, being a child and, which I wasn't a child in the Chestnut days, but being a child and experiencing that, I just remember a lot of kids would show up to those and like, maybe leave in pain, but be like, that was the coolest thing I've ever done, and that's cool. I don't like seeing people be hurt, but if they had a good time doing it, then that's cool.
Absolutely. Were there any venues before then that were particularly notable before that generation?
So there were a lot. So like when I was coming up, when I was a kid, when I was 13 going to some of my first shows, what was it called? The Fern Creek Community Center, which like I don't think they've done a show in 25 years.
Really? Their community center in Fern Creek?
Yeah.
Shows. Wow.
Right in front of the high school. I don't even know if the building's still there, honestly, but that was like, I mean, so many shows were there. And so it doesn't exist. I mean, again, the building exists, but they haven't done a show in forever. The spot that like my first band booked all the time, because it was in the South End, the Southwest End more so, is the Shawnee Masonic Lodge. That place was hopping when I was in high school. My high school band had our last show there, and it was super dope. And I don't know they ever did a show after that, but that was like the spot that we booked all the time. There was a lot of random spots that would pop up and do a few shows. There was obviously like that place, the New Vintage. It had another name before that, and I can't remember the name, but it's like right down the street from Zanzibar. Did you ever go there?
No, I'm not. I'm not sure if I know
was a
what
cool
that
spot.
was.
I mean, it was a decent spot. It had potential. I can't remember the name before the New Vintage, or maybe it had a name after. I don't remember how it went, but my high school band played with Wheatus there.
Oh, wow.
You remember Wheatus?
Yeah.
They were washed up by then. They started, I've told this story a million times, but this audience is probably a little different. They started with Teenage Dirtbag. So like we opened the show.
Wow.
There might have been a band before Wheatus, and then Wheatus plays. There wasn't a lot of people there. Let's say there was 25 people when the song started. They played Teenage Dirtbag and 21 left. Like no one cared about anything after Teenage Dirtbag. And then the lead
play
singer,
that 20 times.
the lead singer, I don't know why you'd like open with that. If you expect anybody to show up or stay. At one point, he turned around. He said, "Does anybody want to see a Kentucky wristwatch?" And the three other people and me were like, "I guess, I don't know." And he turned around. He's fidgeting, and he turns back around. His dick is wrapped around his wrist, and I just remember being like, "Oh," and like 2 of the 4 of us left right then, and I stayed probably another song, and then I left too. Yeah, that venue has nothing to do with that venue other than it was there, but
Right.
There were a lot of good shows there. Trying to remember Citizen. You remember that band?
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, one of Pleasures, I think's first shows. like after the shift from the Foxtrot to Pleasures was with Citizen at that venue. Me Without You played that venue. It was a cool spot. And then I know it's like bigger time, but I gotta say, I think that Headliners has been a pretty important venue over the years for even local shows. When I was younger, they did local shows there pretty regularly. Like I got to play the Headliner stage a ton when I was a teenager. And then there was like, a decade where I played it like twice because they didn't really do local shows. And now they've been doing a little more, and the local scene's just big enough that they can do local shows and it still pack out pretty well, which is really cool. But yeah, I think that's the big spots. I'm sure I'm forgetting somewhere. There was obviously like really before even my time, there was the Brick House. Did you ever go to the new Brick House? The one that was like on 2nd Street or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
I went there. I think that was probably important for some people, but it was like the people that cared about the original Brick House, they didn't care about that one. And then, I don't know, it just never had the same vibe as like the OG Brick House. Jamie from Skull Alley, he was one of the people that like ran the Brick House. And so whenever it quit, that's when he was like, I would like to do, I mean, there was some time between the decision, but eventually he was like, I'd like to do another venue. And then Skull Alley was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think maybe after Skull Alley, wasn't it like there was an Uncle Slayton's and Uncle Pleasant's.
Uncle Pleasant's. That was New Vintage.
New Vintage.
I don't know which.
So that
it was same building.
Okay.
Same stage, everything.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I just don't know which came
I went
first.
to it when it was Uncle Pleasant's.
Okay.
I think if I'm what is their name? Despised Icon played at the time their last American show.
Really?
At Uncle Pleasant's. And before they did like their last show back at home in Canada.
Oh, cool.
And I'm not sure if they have like unbroken up by then, like, how like some bands like Smashing Pumpkins has like, this is our last show, guys, ever. And have a couple last shows, but
hang it up, Billy.
That was, I remember, that was the time when bass drops were very popular to have.
Yes.
And so there was a fish on the wall at Uncle Pleasant's.
Yeah.
He fell down. First song, he fell down.
That's awesome.
And I remember bands like, especially in the metalcore days, there's, I can't think of too many off the top of my head now, but tour packages that would go through there and they would test like the bass drops, like just for sound check, and stuff would fall off the walls because there was just a bunch of, it was like a Shoney's. It had like a bunch of stuff all over the walls. And so eventually they're like, okay, now that this kind of subgenre of this subgenre, like this like motif of it has kind of worked its way into the zeitgeist of the music scene, like of the tour packages, we kind of have to take the stuff off the wall. Like, it's like a part of it. It's like, we didn't expect to do EDM shows, but here we are,
Yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. So that's what it was, Uncle Pleasant's. Yeah, that's the venue I was talking about. That's where we displayed. Yeah, I liked that venue. I don't really know why it didn't make it. I think the location's really great. Obviously, Zanzibar's right there, and it is doing great.
Mountain Asleep's last show was there.
Was it really?
Yeah.
I bet that sucked. And I love Mountain Asleep, but like that was not the place for them to have their last show.
No, it was, I talk about, beyond sold out.
Oh, I believe.
Yeah,
I was there.
There's a video of it. There's quite a few videos of it. And
hell yeah.
Absolutely legendary.
Man, when you texted and said, we're going to talk about, that era, I was like, I don't remember a lot of that. And, not for any cool reason. Like, there's so new data's always coming in. So I've got to like stick stuff somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
So.
When you said the words Mountain Asleep earlier, it was like, there's like this old filing cabinet that has spider webs on it.
Right.
It's like in the room that it's housed in, like the lights have gone off a long time ago. And I open up the filing cabinet, my, certificate up, I'm like, tons of dust flew off. And it was just like, Mountain Asleep. Totally. That's right, that band. Oh my gosh. I hadn't heard that name in over a decade.
You can listen to them on Spotify. Well, on any streaming service. A few years ago, they let me have the honor of hosting all of their stuff. So
wow.
Yeah, it's all
That's
online.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Through your record label, your distro.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which, like because I pay for the label and I can upload as much as I want. So I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course I'll do it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I still get on there and listen to it. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. Good Lord.
Yeah, that was one of the big influential bands for me when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
and them and I guess in total kind of swerve from that kind of genre, but there's a band called Voices of Adria that was kind of like metalcore band,
Okay.
but there was a guy Jordan Haynes.
Oh,
He was in Voices of Adria, I think, or he tracked for them at least.
He produces and engineers. Okay.
Yeah. And Jordan Haynes was he was my first experience like being in a studio, like, you know, playing to a Met the first time, had no idea what I was doing, like
Was he in
actually
Artifacts
16
Pareo?
years old. Yeah, Artifacts Pareo.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, that's it. I think that's actually what I'm thinking of is Artifacts Pareo.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah.
Artifacts was, I mean, the biggest band in the world to me. Like they were bigger
Totally.
than like My Morning Jacket to me.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
at the time.
I mean, and better. If I'm being honest, you know,
it's such an incredible band, and being able to record with him in the principal's office. If you've ever been to,
I've never been to his studio.
His studio, I'm not sure if it still is, but it was for years, like out of it in a school building. Like
really?
Actually, I think he was just there during the summers when they weren't using it, or it was abandoned. I'm not sure how he got this deal, but the studio room, it said principal's office on the door, super official. And you go in, and it's just a whole school. You just park there, and you're like, "This is the studio. It's a giant school." And you're like, "Okay,
that is so
like, just
cool.
Walk in, it's unlocked or whatever. I'll get you or whatever."
Wow.
And a lot of bands had some pretty fun times like recording.
Absolutely,
there, including myself. And he kind of taught me like how that all works, and he was patient with me, thankfully, because it was one of those like, I haven't recorded to a metronome before. It's just been kind of super punk rock for me. You know?
Metronomes are great. I love whenever an engineer, pushes a metronome.
Absolutely. Me too.
Yeah.
Especially in when we are quantizing. It just makes it a little bit easier.
You do some really cool production stuff. So I guess a lot of that's really important for everything that you do. Like, honestly, no metronome is silly.
Yeah. And unless it's, it's supposed to have a live feel or something, then other than that, then I don't know how. Like, heard some really great stuff, like recorded no met. That's just like the whole band's like in a room together.
Oh yeah.
And they go for it. Like, I love, like, but that's a whole different kind of thing you're approaching there.
You still have to be so good that you're a human metronome.
Yes.
Even if you're pushing and pulling and you're like not on tempo, there's a difference between somebody who can't play a single beat through one tempo and knows that like between parts we kind of we ebb and we flow. So yeah, I mean, I agree. There's plenty of times where a metronome's unnecessary. I actually just tracked a record for Stars Don't Mean Anything.
Oh wow.
And they didn't use a metronome, and their drummer Sasha is phenomenal at knowing when to speed up and slow down, and like there's parts where they'd ring out. And I would be like, you're going to have to click that out for the guitar player. And he'd be like, no, like, it's in my head and it's right. And he'd be right. He'd like hit his cymbal and it'd be, let's say 8 beats before the next cymbal hit. And he would just be like, and every time like, oh, you're right. That's where it was,
Wow.
So yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Very impressive. I don't usually trust people to be that good. I'm always like, okay. And then, usually I'm right, but he killed it. And they killed it. They all did great.
That's awesome. That's super cool to hear. So as a tracking engineer, how do you, and audio engineer as well, I know you edit, do you ever try to recapture that like wild live energy that you have experienced through those DIY venue shows when you're recording a band in the studio? Because I remember it reminded me of like recording with Jordan Haynes. Like there was a band that, they had a long name. I think it was Aesthetics versus Architecture or something.
I remember that name. Yeah.
They were throwing like they would buy like a cheap guitar from Walmart and they throw it across the room during recording, just to give it like just one part of a song a certain feel, And so I wonder if there's any stories you have about that or any way you try to implement that kind of live feel.
Honestly, these days I don't try that so much. When I used to record hardcore bands more, especially like weirder ones, I remember, what was it? Like the first Damaged Goods EP, I believe that's the one Josh Raff's on. He brought a box of glass, like bottles, plates, and it was a small room back then. I don't think you ever were in my original room, but it was like a 7x10, like a tiny room. It was covered in carpet, like ceiling, everything. And he was like, "Can I just, for this breakdown part, just break all this?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I mean, until I tore that room out, there was particles of glass in it, but like, he's just smashing things, I'm recording. He's like, "Did you get it?" And I'm like, "I mean, I got something."
Yeah,
And it, you can hear it on that record. I'm pretty sure it's the Damaged Goods record. I'll be honest, I don't attempt a lot of weird or interesting things like that. I don't feel like I think I do interesting music, but I think so often I'm like, this is how I like to record drums. Pretty standard. I just want everything to sound great. In post, if we want to edit it to sound worse, I guess we can. There's always...
That's my ideology too. Like, we can make it sound worse.
Definitely.
Like, yeah.
And then, there's certain things that I trust. I don't like... If you want that vocal to sound like the mic's across the room, the mic needs to be across the room. I used to record with people before I recorded. I mean, I was like 15, but I'd be like, "I want this part to, that like," I didn't know what to call it back then, but that sound where it's like reverby, something across the room. And they'd always be like, "Yeah, just do it on the mic and I'll fix it." And I was always like, it just doesn't sound exactly right. So there is, when you stick the mic across the room, you yell at it. I think that, you're picking up room noises and stuff that you just can't get from editing. And I'm sure you can if you have all the plugins in the world. I use the bare minimum plugins. I don't really have, and it's more just so because I don't know what's good, so that's not a brag. My shit doesn't sound good because of me. I send anything you've heard that you were like, "That sounds good," it goes to Ben Moore out in California and he makes it sound phenomenal, but yeah, other than that, I mean, I throw 13 mics on a drum set.
13.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So again, my idea is I'm gonna send you 13 tracks, Ben. If you delete 5 of them, hey, that's on you. I know whatever you're gonna send me back is gonna be great, but I do top and bottom of snare, top and bottom of mid tom, top and bottom of floor tom, inside the kick, front of the kick in the porthole. If I have it, I'll do 14 and do kick beater side, get that little squeak.
Oh.
Ideally, and again, this takes it all the way to 16 if I've got matched condenser pencils or whatever, but one on each cymbal instead of overheads. This is something I just learned recently from Ben. 12 inches from the bell, centered, one on each cymbal. Same thing on the hi-hat, again, only if you have matched pairs. And then, so that's, we're up to, I think, almost there. And then, close in the room, and then like in the other room, and
wow.
And you get a lot. I only recently really like discovered what I like so much about it, but the outside the room one gets so much bass. It's really weird. I don't know if that's like everywhere, but like my room mic that I stick outside of the room, I mean, it might be the best mic on the whole kit. I can pull up all the frequencies and get a good mix. The one in there sounds good. I mean, they're the same. They're like both Rode NTAs or something. I don't know. But the one in the room, I feel like for whatever reason, you lose a lot of the bass. But outside of the room, I don't know. I guess because the room as a whole is like breathing. You hear that like. So yeah, that's the normal mic setup. I really don't remember what. Oh yeah, we were talking about unconventional stuff. So yeah, I mean, ton of mics on the drums. Guitar cabs, nothing crazy. Sometimes this might be kind of what you're talking about. For the Stars stuff, we tracked their single guitars, one at a time. And then for their doubles, I had them set up at the same time. I faced the amps 45 degrees away from each other, and they played their doubles at the same time. So, you get a little bit like, and I told them, I said, your initial tracks are going to be up front. They're going to be what people are listening to for precision. I said these doubles, like unless it's anything where you're really Tweedledee, they're there for like texture and depth, like, so don't worry about, I mean, don't fucking fuck the part up, but don't worry about like being the master guitar player, like just play the parts, have fun, and so yeah, we did stuff like that, which probably captures a more of a live sound because they're both riffing together over the drum set,
Yeah.
Bass, I'm a huge proponent of miking a bass amp. I know at this point I feel like everyone does DI, and I do DI too, but I absolutely mic the bass amp. I hate the thought of just doing DI. It sounds great. I know there are people that put out records that sound better than mine that haven't owned a bass amp in years, probably, but like, I personally, I'm going to pick this so you can cut that part out. Or you can't, I don't care. We all do it. But yeah, I got to mic the bass amp. I think there's something about what it captures, and you can watch on the tracks, between a DI and a bass amp. Like, there's so much life in a waveform of the amp, and the DI, it's just like boo, but like on a bass amp, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it could be made up science.
I feel like I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
Like more body to it.
Totally.
And you get room too.
Definitely.
You forget about the space around the bass amp.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I know that probably all of that can be recreated again with like really nice plugins, but I never learned on plugins. I think some people, again, like out of necessity, got really good at recreating sounds, because not everybody got to build a room in their garage when they were in their early 20s. I get that that's like a privilege of mine to be like, no, it sounds better to mic it. So I fully trust that some people have dialed in those plugins and it sounds great. But yeah, for me, it's always been just micing that thing sounds best,
Yeah, I'm with you, and I get it, and it's great to just do both,
Absolutely,
especially for the mixing engineer.
I always send both tracks to whoever's engineering or mixing whatever stuff, and I don't know what they do with that DI one. Actually, you mentioned it earlier. Just to clarify, I really don't do a lot of mixing. I'll like mix demos and stuff. I think I'm only credited as a mixer on like one album ever, and I couldn't even tell you what it is because I just remember doing it and forgetting about it. I'm extremely confident in my tracking, my engineering in that sense, but I don't think I just don't have the juice. I'm not a great mixer. I have never tried to put my efforts into that. Maybe one day I could be, but I'm also deaf in my right ear, and I just feel like there's a lot to have in 2 ears, when you have two speakers and you're trying to make things sound right in a mix,
Yeah. And I think tracking is, I got to be like ultimately one of the most vital steps in the whole recording process.
If
it's literally the recording. Right.
Exactly.
It's a fix it and, pre mentality, you don't just record and be like, it's fine, but we'll just fix it later.
Right.
It's, I always just, call that polish versus repair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I get stems sent to me, I'm either repairing or I'm polishing. Like pretty much just as simple as that.
That's a really good way of looking at it. And hopefully whenever I send you things for your bands, you're only polishing.
Only polishing.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're a big Neil Young fan, right?
The biggest. He's great.
Can you tell me about how they came to be such a big influence on you?
I genuinely don't remember like the first time I put on a Neil Young song or anything. I'm sure I pirated it. When you're like really young, and I feel like even though we're 6 years apart or 7 years apart, I feel like the bands that every 11 to 12-year-old discovers are kind of the same. So, you get into like Nirvana, and Nirvana credits Neil Young as like helping start the grunge movement. Don't quote me. I don't know that Nirvana credits them, but when you read about Nirvana and the grunge movement, Neil Young gets credited a lot of times because in the 80s he was like, what if we just crank this shit up? And I play my country ditties, but we like, really let him rock. And so I knew Nirvana. I love Nirvana. And I think at some point I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, I mean, at one time, it's not this way now, or at least it isn't for me. At one time, pirating was so easy that the world was at your fingertips. So you were like, oh, someone mentioned the band, I'm going to go download their whole discography.
Their anthology immediately.
Yeah. And so I definitely didn't get his whole discography because it's broad, but I got some Neil Young, probably Harvest. I believe Harvest was the first record I ever heard, and it starts with Out on the Weekend. And I hit play. And this has happened a couple of times in my life with certain bands. Up to this point, let's say I was 23. I was pretty late in the Neil Young game. I hit play, and it just starts, and it's a beautiful little song, Out on the Weekend. And I was like, "What the fuck?" And I'd heard country, I'd heard folk, I'd heard rock. I had never heard it done exactly like this. I'd had friends actually who kind of played songs and were like, "We are modeled after Neil Young." Not that it was anywhere near as good. But I just remember being like, oh my gosh, whatever this is the best thing my ears have ever heard. And then you put on another record and you're like, oh wow, this is different, but it's obviously the same songwriter, and it's also the best thing my ears have ever heard. And, I can do that with most of his records. There's a couple that haven't connected with me as much, and I don't even, a lot of people hate on some of the 80s stuff, and I don't. I think it's cool that he was being experimental, even if it didn't land for everyone. But yeah, I think he is my favorite songwriter, and, so the best, but obviously that's what subjective or objective. I remember which one is which. Subjective, I believe, is yeah. But yeah, like I said, I didn't discover him until I was 23, and people throughout the time had been like, "You should check out Neil Young," and I was always like, "Sure, I'll do that," and then didn't. Right. But then when I did, I was like, "Fuck, why did I wait so long? This is so good."
Yeah,
oof, so good. Hey, this might be a hot take. He still puts out phenomenal material. His current records, they're weirder. Sometimes they're more drawn out, but damn, are they good. And I know I'm a fan person, but I love everything he does. So
yeah, that I remember you mentioning how much he meant to you when I had recorded with you maybe the first time, and I immediately dove in and started listening, and I was like, "Oh, I love this.
That's awesome.
Great." You believe you have a piece of equipment that he used, right?
I still tell that story every time. Literally, when I was recording Stars, I was like, "Hey, you might not even think this is cool, but I just have to let you know this thing you're touching." Yeah, so it's a headphone splitter. It's got two inputs. It has a A-B-Y switch on the input side, and then it has 3 channels, 6 headphone splits, and for each channel there's 1 volume knob. And I bought it from someone on eBay, and I bought it for not very much money. Back then people were like, "Yeah, I have this old piece of junk here, you can have it." Now everyone's like, "Well, this old piece of junk is worth $1 million." But I bought it, I remember, and after I bought it, he said, "Hey, I don't know if this matters to you. This, I can't remember if he said, if it's been so long. I don't remember if he said I was told or if he was like, I can guarantee it." But he was like, "This was a piece that was used in a studio. Neil Young, tracked in. He definitely used it." And I was just like, well, that's the coolest fucking thing ever. And there's a couple times that's happened to me. I have a Sun 200S that I bought in Cincinnati, and the guy was like, "Just so you know, this was the bass player of MC5s." And I was like, what the fuck? That's so weird and cool. And I bought it for $400, which obviously him touching it shouldn't make it be more valuable, but
it does.
The world was crazy. Yeah,
it just does.
But yeah, so that piece by Neil Young, I mean, I still use it to this day. It doesn't even work properly. I need to open it up and resolder something because it only lets you hear in one side, which for me works perfect because I only hear in one side. But for everyone else in the world, they're always like, "Oh, this fucking sucks." So, Neil Young touched that. Don't you dare say it sucks.
I'm sure, you could with a watch of a YouTube video, or
Oh
you
yeah,
could take it to some guy who loves doing it and
definitely,
show him the love it deserves, so it can last
definitely.
for another 50 years.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
plan for sure. I'm gonna, it's got a microphone mount on the bottom, so like, I mean, it's the perfect piece. You can just stand it right there and have 6 people around it doing gang vocals or whatever.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
so cool. Yeah, I did your love for so Neil Young is like known for keeping his sound really like authentic, his love for analog, high
totally.
fidelity. Did a lot of that rub off on you as a tracking engineer?
Not the analog thing. Everything I do is digital purely because I'm not made of money.
Yeah,
Like analog tracking
insane.
is yeah, it's cool. Uh, so that part just it wasn't allowed to rub off on me. And because I think I've spent my life playing in punk bands, the like high fidelity thing didn't really rub off on me. Like it does to an extent. I like high quality gear, because I know, and this isn't me fishing, I'm a very mediocre guitar player. You give me a shitty Walmart amp or guitar, sorry, I'm gonna sound worse because it's not a crafted guitar. It my fingers aren't moving like Cliff's fingers are. So, you give Cliff a Walmart guitar, he's gonna sound like $1,000,000, because Cliff's just a phenomenal musician. The first time I ever played my American made Fender Tele, I was like, oh my God, like I'm not half bad at guitar, and then I realized like,
Mhm.
okay, like the neck is smooth and the frets are nice and half of them aren't dead and blah blah blah. So I don't really have that like uh that love for high fidelity as a whole that he might have. I don't listen to Spotify and go, well, sometimes I do, but for the most part, I don't listen to it and go, ooh, this is trash. I mean, then sometimes I do. I'm like, damn, like this is not the best version of this. This is compressed to shit.
Right.
Uh, but yes, like capturing the live thing, capturing the raw sound, except for, and I don't know what he does. I've really never studied it. Like, I want my drummer to play to a metronome, but past that, like, I want us to, you know, sound raw. Obviously, I leave mistakes in if it's a good mistake. And there's a difference. We were talking about this with Stars. There's like such a difference between like, oh, that's a cool mistake, and like, oh man, you just doinked it. Like don't leave the doink on the track, but like
Right.
sometimes you come in a bar early and pull out, and then when you start, you go back and listen. You're like, I don't know, that sounds kind of cool. Like just the
Added some humanity to it. Yeah,
yes,
some live element to
me
it.
me without you, my other favorite musicians, they have stuff like that all over their records. He like his voice breaks in I think the song's called Wolf Am I or Shadow Am I, and he's like, ah, and it just like cracks and like they left it. And I remember being younger and being like, why would you leave that? And
Mhm.
at some point you grow to like love that, and you're like, oh my God, like he was tracking, he screamed, it tweaked. I'm sure somebody, you want to do that over? And he was like, no, why did you
Mhm.
stop it? That was the perfect take,
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that I think that rubs off on me. Um, just, yeah, maybe not the high fidelity thing because I don't have the high quality ears. I spent half my life playing music without earplugs. Now I double plug it. I really want to save what hearing I have left,
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I like that he's that way. I think that pretension is really cool. I just find myself not being able to be pretentious always. But like, I don't hate on all of it. Sometimes I'm like, man, that's cool that you're so confident in your, you know, ability to hear frequencies. I mean, obviously I can hear like frequencies, but again, whatever lossless. I remember downloading a record lossless and being like, it sounds the same on my Apple MacBook speakers, like I'm not really sure what I should be hearing here. And obviously when you put it on the studio, you go, oh yeah, there's lots of differences, but the average person is not getting to have a full studio setup. So I do think when I make music, I'm thinking of the average person that might be listening to it.
Yeah. There's there seems to be a line for us so far at least where, a new type of audio format drops and people in the industry are like, this is going to change everything. You know, like, of course, the jump to digital was like, yeah, that changed everything.
Oh yeah.
But then going forward, it's like, oh well, this is a high fidelity file, like it's like a wave file, so it's like really, it's like uncompressed audio. Like when that first started coming out, and then there's like the lossless, and now there's Dolby Atmos or spatial audio, and for those jumps, like I when Dolby Atmos was introduced, I was of the mind like maybe this could be something that changes, like is like a big change, because it's not something that's like if you a texture that you hear. It was like, no, when you do physical movement or there's actual movements that is happening in what seems like a 3D environment, but only using 2 speakers, like you're able to experience surround sound with just 2 headphones. And it's like, I thought maybe that could be a big change, but it seems to have just kind of not affected anything at all. I learned how to do it. I've watched like a masterclass on it, and like thankfully Logic has an in-house Dolby Atmos spatial audio kind of engine where when you're mixing, it actually shows like a mannequin head from the shoulders up, and you can place tracks on animations. So you say you have like a guitar and you place it on a track to go around your head or to go up, go down, go far away.
Oh my goodness.
So like I had piano keys that would circle around someone's head and then spread apart like a band of
this is like Pink Floyd
separation.
Shit. This is cool.
Yes, and my favorite band, by the way, is Pink Floyd. Like
really?
They had the most influence on me as a kid. David Gilmour learning to play guitar at 25 like was like really inspirational for a young person who's like, it's too late, you know, that thing we do where we're like, we always do the thing where we're like, it's too late for me to start now,
right?
But then 10 years later, you're like, man, I wish I started then.
Right.
It's too late for me to start now. And then it happens again. 20 years later, you're like, I wish I had started 10 years ago when I said it was too late, because the first time I said it was too late.
Totally.
But the Dolby Atmos, I was listening to some records. There's only like 2 artists who had put, at the time there was like one. It was like The Weeknd had put out a Dolby Atmos record. I'm like, whoa, this could be somewhat, but it seems to just be kind of a cool way to watch film and stuff, like where it can kind of immerse your experience more. But I'm curious of what the next big jump will be, or there'll be more adaptation, because it's hard to adapt a Dolby Atmos universally because it requires headphones to have a gyroscope inside of them and like a gimbal, pretty much.
Okay.
That tracks head movement and balance and keeps a retaining balance. And you're not going to find those in like 95% of headphones.
Totally.
So it's like pretty much for one brand of headphones.
Yeah.
So that's something that maybe in the future, you know, the Dollar Tree headphones you get will have, you know, they'll be wireless, they'll have gyroscoping in them, they'll have all these frills and bells and whistles now that we charge a premium for, but I'm curious of what the next like big step in audio is going to be. Do you have any thoughts on this, or have you thought about or have any prediction of what the next big change in audio is going to be?
I honestly haven't. Without getting too dark, like the world is so, capitalism and all these factors, like I feel like innovation isn't really a thing as much anymore, at least in the things that I care about. Everything's about like getting, you know, as much as you can for the cheapest labor and stuff. So when I think about, I guess I don't think about stuff like that because I don't feel like we're in an era of attempting to revolutionize things. We're in an era where we're like, let's milk people for everything, and you know, let's convince them that these minute changes are these big deals so we can raise prices without actually giving them any new cool technology. And so because of that, I guess I really don't even like, and maybe I just don't have a brain wired for that, but I don't put a lot of thought into what's next. Like I like what I have. I hate how convoluted all new technology makes everything. The system that I would have recorded you on when you came to my studio, 5+ years ago, was a system that I bought in 2009. I bought a Apple MacBook Pro. I bought a Universal Audio Apollo. I don't remember what it was a duo. It was 8 channels, 4 preamps, and then I bought a 4710D, so the other 4 preamps. That setup I used flawlessly from 2009 until 2022. And in 2022, I finally said, okay, it's been 11 years. I'm going to buy a new MacBook. I'm going to buy a new Apollo with a new 4710D. I'm going to have double the channels. Ideally, I'm going to have all this updated technology. It's going to be great. In the 2 years I've had that, and again, from 2009 to 2022, I had 0 issues. In 2022, I finally decided to upgrade because my Mac started acting up. And that's fine. It had an 11-year run, of course, in 2017, I had to turn off updates because the updates weren't staying up to date with the version of Pro Tools that I bought back then. But overall, I had a flawless setup. I would sit down, I would open the computer, I would turn on my machines, and I would start recording. And there was no hassle. In the 2 years I've had the same setup, but the newer version, I would say every 3 months, I'm like, when I hit play, I can see the track moving, but there's no audio coming out of my speakers. Let me sit down and figure that out. And then I change a bunch of things, and here's, for some reason, this driver uninstalled. So let me reinstall the driver, whatever that even means. Honestly, I'm not a computer person. For whatever reason, Universal Audio Console, this new thing they came out with, it's new to me. I don't know how long it's been around, that communicates between the Pro Tools and the Universal Audio, now that's not working properly. Let me reinstall. And actually, the reason I'm so amped up about it right now is last week it happened. I had been having this thing happen where I would turn Pro Tools on, all my machines are on. I'm hitting play. I can watch that it's going, but there's no audio coming out of, through my Apollo to my speakers. Shut it down, restart it, twiddle with some stuff, shut it down, restart it. Okay, it's working. I'm just going to be happy it's working. And that was happening for a couple months. Last Thursday, I went to do something and it happened, and it was 8 a.m. And I'm like, okay, I don't have anything I have to do today. I'm going to spend the day figuring out what the actual issue is and fixing it instead of just starting and restarting and hoping it works. I spent 5 hours, 6 hours, got nowhere. I mean, I had a help ticket opened with Pro Tools. I had a help ticket opened with Universal Audio. I was on Reddit and they weren't helpful at all. They actually deleted my post, and I love Reddit, but they deleted my post and said, you have to post it in this this thread that already exists. So I did, and I looked and said, oh man, there's 10 other questions that were asked today that no one's answered. I hope mine isn't like that. And sure enough, it was. I found a Universal Audio forum, and they were mega helpful. They were offering all the suggestions. I spent, like I said, 5 or 6 hours, got nowhere, had something I had to do, said, I'll come back tomorrow. Went the next day, was doing other things. I'm fucking changing all these settings and doing all this stuff. And every time you do that, you got to restart. And then I've got this tech guy, and he's like, have you tried uninstalling and reinstalling your drivers? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to do a thing, everything is the same as it was yesterday, except now it doesn't work. So there has to be something I can click that'll make it work. And I had a band from California coming in on Monday, and it's Friday now, and this stuff isn't working. And I'm talking to my mixer out in California, and I'm like, this is my issue. And he doesn't use Apollo, but he uses Pro Tools. And he's like, and this guy, he is a professional. He works with giant names all the time. This is his only job. I trust him so much. And he said about 3 times a year, I just have to uninstall and reinstall everything and start from the ground up. And he's like, yeah, it fucking sucks, but it just is what it is. And I was like, all right, I'm going to uninstall and reinstall the Apollo software, but that feels like not a good answer. That's stupid, And so I did it, and it immediately fixed it. And I was just like, this is Saturday morning. I was like, this is crazy to me. You know, I've
Yeah.
never had this issue in the first 11 years, and now in these next. So yeah, that's just my my tirade on how modern things don't necessarily make things better. You know, now I have to be online to use Pro Tools because it's a subscription based thing, and it has to like connect and be like, oh yes, you are allowed to use this on this computer. Like that's fucking bullshit. So yeah, I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time looking for the advancement of technology because it feels like all we do is regress, to make financial gains for fucking big people that I don't know anything about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for that to be a little ranty.
Oh no, quite all right. It's understandable, and I definitely feel that viscerally. It seems as though we've gone toward as far as like people behind the boards. They're forced to do things they've never had to do before, like subscription models on everything. It used to be you buy the software and then you have it for life.
Yes,
and thankfully. I know I just learned Logic's doing it for iPad, but I bought my version of Logic, and I think you can still just buy it, and then it's just you get updates for free for the rest of your life. But it used to be like that for everything. And but I know I pay monthly just to have photo editing software and then something to edit video in. You know,
totally.
And it is a shame that that's where we've come as far as kind of milking the people behind the boards for that. And it also seems as though a lot of, probably 90%, if not more, of the tools or quote unquote innovations or advancements all seem to be shortcuts instead of something that is productive or makes the product better. They all seem to have a shortcut type of feel to them where it's, well, this allows you to not do this anymore. And it's not usually like there's a line there where if it is a tool that allows you to have more time to actually focus on making the track better because it's something that's like grunt work almost, like where it's like if you're taking a mouth, there's a tool that I used to take out mouth clicks.
Oh,
it's just mouth sounds. And that's amazing because I used to go through, and if I saw the little spike, I do it by hand.
Yeah.
But now I have a software that does it, and I trust it. I've heard what it does.
Trusting it's the hard part.
And I was like, this sounds great. And so that is something I'm like, I enjoy that. I think that's great. That saves me hours of time.
Oh yeah.
But then there's stuff that's, is things that are going to, I think we already have them in some way, but there is, I know we for sure have stuff that's like, put in a prompt and I'll make a song for you.
Oh, that's what I was getting ready to say. We're getting ready to talk about AI.
Yeah. We're, yes. And that is where AI comes in, and it starts to, and AI's been a part of software and plugins for a very long time before it was, it's always had a negative connotation, but now that, it's kind of taking over our lives, taking good people's jobs and stuff. But there is tools that, I feel do a great job of removing work that is unnecessary for us to do so we can focus on making good. But then, of course, what is sold to the mass public is this does all of it for you. This edits the video for you. This makes the song, mixes the track for you. It does it all. You don't have to do anything. It'll sing it for you.
Right.
and so at that point, that's where it's like gets dystopian and it gets to feel really bad and like we are regressing. So I definitely feel that. But there is a slight hope, for the engineers and video editors who have found that they have a lot more time available to them because of that. But it seems as though the stuff that's generally sold, the shortcut software, is sold to people who are trying to cut out people who are behind the boards. They're trying to cut out audio engineers. Mixes the track for you. Okay, I don't need an audio engineer. Cut you off.
Masters it for you.
I have lots of friends. I used to work a lot on Twitch and like YouTube editing, where like there's a lot of people who've made like RuneScape videos that just did really good. But
that's awesome.
But when we were doing stuff on Twitch, tons of people who also like edited videos, highlights. I did like a lot of highlight videos for people, and that was just immediately like that was one of the first like ghost jobs to just go, because streamers are like, oh, I'll just have a software pick the best moments for me. and edited it all together for me in like 30 seconds. And especially in like the realm of artists, I think this is the number one most hit is artists who create logos or album artwork for people. Those just when you're able to, as the artist, the musician, if you're able to just give a prompt, immediately get a result back and say, oh, I want to change like this. Okay, immediately get the result back, and just do all the get all the iterations done to where it's like passable. And then you can just, that just seems very, it seems very satisfying to those people and at that time. And it's definitely addicting to, especially compared to where, if you're working with an actual artist and they're like, okay, I'll get it to you in like a few days or something. You want that immediate satisfaction. And I had an artist, he was kind of like a pop rap artist. He made an AI image. He gave it a picture of his face. He had AI do some editing to it, and then he handed it off to an actual artist who drew on top of it and did something. I was like, that's a cool way to kind of meld those two worlds where it's like, okay, this is like the foundation of what I want. And I was like, that didn't irk me as much because you still got a real artist and paid a real artist and got them involved, and they may not have had to do as much to like get that exact look on the foundation. But they're like, I want you to add texturing and add, things around me to kind of fill it out and to make it seem more human. But I think you're absolutely right. There's pros and cons to this, but it seems it's very tumultuous at this time.
It's rough. All that stuff about AI, I don't use any. I mean, of course, like anything I have that, has AI, I use even if I don't want to. But like all the, prompt things, I've benefited from them. People have shown me hilarious songs where they said, sing about how my mom and my dog are in love. And I'm like, oh man, that is hilarious. Like, I don't know how the computer did that. That is so funny. Also, it's terrible for the environment, apparently. Like that one prompt you gave it sucked 40 gallons out of the wherever it's from. I don't know anything about it. I've read enough to be like, oh, it's bad if these things are true. So like all I'm getting at is I don't use it, but I coming from a lower class background, it is hard for me to be mad at people that are like, I don't have, $250 to pay someone to maybe paint something that is what I wanted. Whereas on AI, you just like give it a million prompts until it shows up as what you want. It sucks. It's stealing people's art. Like, I'm not pro AI. It's just like this weird thing where I'm like, I'm against it, but also like I know what it's like to be this person that has no money, and it's just like, well, I also would like to be able to benefit from art. So it feels classist to be, against the people that are using it, because we have made this segues back to what we do, because I think that I'm a very reasonably priced recording engineer, but we've made these things so unattainable to anyone who isn't financially secure that it just sucks. Like, art wasn't meant to be something that only people with money can participate in, Absolutely. So like, because I have the money to do so, I recently, for this Cadillac Young EP that I'm going to put out, paid someone $250 to paint me something that I had an idea of. And she did a great job. She took some liberties of her own. And that's super cool that I was able to do that. But I also recognize that, like, even me 5 years ago would not have been able to do that, and it's not that, like, I worked so much harder than other people have that I deserve to now be able to do this and they don't deserve to have those things. So yeah, it's a weird, I can find myself on both sides of the argument. I'm never going to be on the side of like destroying the environment. From what I hear, AI is very bad for the environment. So that sucks. I would rather people, and this is something also I think that I do. I'm not a good artist. Every once in a while you'll see something that I put out that I did the art for, and you're probably like, he did the art for that. It's really bad, and that's okay. That, again, subjective. I'm not a good artist, and that's absolutely all right. I think I have great visions, but I would prefer at this point in my life to see people do bad art, but no, it's like just whatever their hand could create over, prompts on a computer. But I also, and I don't know much about this, but I feel like it's dangerous because I bet it sometime people, said sampling in hip hop, that's not art. And like, that's such art, like there's a few TikToks I follow where they like break down all the samples in a song. And I mean, it'll be like one song and it'll have 15 samples in the first 20 seconds, and they'll be like, this is from this. And they time stretched this and they pitch shifted this. And I'm just like, this is more talented than anything I do, like this is so fucking cool. And I feel like in those early stages, you probably had a bunch of people sitting around a table being like, that's not, an acceptable form of expression. So.
Oh, yeah. People lost their minds when auto-tune came out.
Oh, yeah.
People were like, music is over.
Right.
Where it's all over, where it's all done.
And when it's done poorly, it is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you were talking about capturing the live sound. I do Melodyne when a note is just really bad. I will be like, let me just get you closer to that note you were going for. If you can ever hear it, I'm like, oh, I did too much. I'd rather the note be a little off, but I don't hate on people that use it as a tool, because there are absolutely songs where I'm like, oh man, like that's a part of like the aesthetic of the vocal, that person can clearly fucking sing, but you're doing this other cool thing with it, so everything has its place. I'm not saying stealing people's artwork has its place. We're, so early into that. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier with not being excited about modern technology. Cause like all the new shit I feel like I learn about, like you learn about a new thing that happened and then you're like, oh, you learn about all the people that it affects. And there's just so much. Again, capitalism has just driven everything. You said it, to make everything a shortcut, yes. And I think that one of the best parts of art is not the shortcut. And I'm not going to say that you sitting there cutting out, vocal pops and stuff is the art. So like, hell yeah, that's cool, but a part of me is like, I don't know, just leaving those vocal pops. That's just, I'm not shitting on your production style, but like me, I'm just like, oh, I just leave it. If you do it. So like I do try when I'm doing vocals, and it ended up being an issue on this Cadillac Young record that I just cut. Like I try to de-S myself, and there's parts where I listen back and I'm like, oh shit, like I just left the S off that word, like let's say it's never going to be the word beans, but we'll just say the word beans, and I'll be like bean. And then I'll listen, back to the first mix, and I'm like, fuck, did I not say beans? Like it was the lyric is beans. And so then I messaged Chip, who I had mixed this most recent thing, Chip from Deddy, great guy. And I said, can you take an S from something else and throw it on there? Like that is unnatural that I would just say, a word I didn't mean to say. And so he did. And then it just made me realize like, fuck, like I've gone too far. I'm using the de-esser up here and I'm like making my shit sound unnatural. I should just do it. And it is what it is,
Right.
So
you're de-essing yourself live.
Yeah. Wow. So I don't do it.
And the performance.
Right. I don't do it live, but like when I'm recording, I'm really conscious of, like not, try to make soft P's and B's and yeah. So maybe I've gone too far. I need to.
No, that's pretty cool though. But yeah, to where it gets to the point where you're not actually saying your S's.
Right.
But I've actually had to do that before, where I've added that's something that happens where sometimes S's disappear, or like sometimes in the recording just that part doesn't sound right, or it's just not there. And I have absolutely more than 10 times taken an S from something else and put it after another word.
Well, good. I'm glad to know I'm not alone.
That's pretty normal.
Hell yeah.
But last thing that I'll say on this topic to kind of end it in a positive note is that I think there's just some technological advances that seem to me objectively good. And so this is the obligatory Focusrite shout out that I always do.
Okay.
But Focusrite is a Swedish company, started pretty small, but they pretty much just, from what I've observed, they just made a really great, really well working piece of equipment, the audio interfaces they make. And I've seen just I did a shotgun test with a friend of mine with like an Apollo Twin and the cheapest 2i2 or 1i2 Focusrite, and I could really hardly hear a difference.
Really?
I was impressed. I expected, I was like, okay, I'm gonna hear some, but I was really impressed at how similar they are, and the price difference is a zero.
Man,
Like one's $100,
Yeah.
one's $1,200.
I'm gonna have to talk to you further about that, like when we're off air.
Yeah.
Through all of the stuff I experienced this past weekend, I was like, I have to have a backup system. I need something where if Apollo's not working, fuck it, shut it down. Bands coming in from California.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Oh, sorry, I can't record you. No, we're going to throw these fucking Scarlets on, and I'm fucking running with it,
Yeah. And I saw, myself included, but I saw so many like really young people being able to, for the first time ever in a generation, record easily. Like, they can, $100 is a lot of money.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But they're able, it's more realistic than 1,200 or 1,000 or 800 for a used Apollo.
Absolutely.
And they were able to actually make the money, and they were actually able to track. I saw this generation of young people tracking in their rooms, their dorm rooms, and then, mixing it themselves, or they just send it to me. And I'm happy to work with your dorm room vocals.
Absolutely.
And it was just a really positive experience for me, just seeing like a technological advancement that seems to have just been for the overall good for young artists to actually, it was like the last thing that seemed to be gate kept for artists was like being able to record your own vocals at a good quality. There's Grammy winning albums that have been recorded with the Focusrite. And cheaper microphones. You don't need, like, even this is $100 Audio Technica microphone. That's just like phenomenal. I can't believe it, like how good it is.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's really good to see a new generation of young people be able to record themselves seemingly for the first time at a quality in which they can send to a professional engineer and have it done that way, because I know I'm this way as well. One of the reasons why I started recording myself is some artists, I found, some artists are different than others for sure in the way they approach recording, but some of them, and myself included, it's like recording for somebody else, like where like an engineer is like says, okay, go. Like that's kind of, it's not conducive to the most like comfortable recording environment for you, you're performing almost, and which is almost a bit separate thing from the comfortable tracking.
Yeah, definitely.
Where you go in there and some strangers like, all right, and you ready? Yep. Okay. Now do the thing. And then
I'm watching you.
And you have to, as Casey calls it, turn on the faucet.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to just go like, dap somebody. Hey, how's it going? All right, you ready? And then you have to be on, like turn it on.
Totally.
It's like, well, that's that. But for some people, a lot of people in hip hop I've recorded, they're like, that's the only way I can record. I need that urgency. I need that kind of on the spotness of being told, all right, and having the deadline. Like, I got to have the track done by this because this is when we're going to record. And then when I do it, the ceremoniousness of being able to rehearse beforehand, like doing it in the shower 10 times because like you got to go to do it for real somewhere else. And I don't relate to that, but I totally can, like, I've heard that experience from so many people. I'm like, that's interesting.
That's awesome.
But for me, I'm the 43 takes by myself, in the room by myself. So I don't have to worry about being observed or like judged, and especially, young people feel that way when it's like they're new to something and they go into a studio the first time. It's like, oh, they're going to think I'm bad because I had to retake it a bunch of times.
Right.
Like, it's just so much better for a young person to be able to do those vocal tracks or even instrument tracks like in their room alone, and then they can go off and send it to somewhere or go to the studio with the stems.
Totally.
And it just it's a really neat way for that to be for that to have gone. But moving on, you've been in a lot of bands over the years.
A lot, you're right.
You are currently in a band called Shitfire.
Yeah.
Before we break down that name, what other projects are you currently in, and what are some of the notable ones that you have been in the past?
So connected to Shitfire is Cadillac Young and the Shively Shitfires. It is all the same members except Brady from Shitfire. He is not in it. But we shift and I'm the lead vocalist, and it's country music. And so Luke shifts to bass, Cliff stays on guitar, but also plays slide. And then Reeves, who's just a friend of ours and who is a phenomenal drummer in lots of his own projects, he plays drums. We have guest people here and there, do vocals and banjo and fiddle and stuff like that. But the core is the Shitfire folks. So there's that. There is Pleasures of the Flesh, which used to be the Foxery, and then through a bunch of changes and stuff, we decided, okay, I think we've lost enough members that were associated with the Foxery. We now need to be a new name. So there's Pleasures of the Flesh. And then there's Loam. I played drums in Loam. That is, I haven't played drums for a band in over a decade. So that's been, excuse me, that's been the big focus this past year. We tracked a record. I tracked my first record on drums. We just hit spacebar on the last recording session like 2 weeks ago. It took about a year to do it. Dan Serkey, who I mentioned earlier, he plays guitar. His wife Devin sings. It started because they wrote, and you'll maybe connect with this because I know some of the production stuff you do. They wrote songs with a synth and drum machines and guitar, and they would send it to me, and it was always just like, hey, this is me and Devin fucking off, check it out. And every time I'd listen, I'd be like, these are phenomenal songs. Like, I'm so jealous I'm not a part of this thing y'all are, which is our whole relationship. Dan Serkey is one of my best friends, and when he met Devin, I was like, I'm so jealous I'm not in this relationship, like, I want to, you all are so cute, blah blah blah. And so that just extended. They started making music, and I was just like, now's my chance to actually get in. So for about a year, I just kept being like, oh man, like, I think if you took this thing you're doing and you made it, full band, it could be pretty sweet. And all he listens to Radiohead and weird bands. So all the drums were ticky tack weird. You go in and you're like, I'm just gonna select these random hits, and then you hit play and you're like, that's cool. So I was like, I will do that on drums. Like, I will listen to your tracks and I'll figure out ways to like make non-conventional drum beats, if you let me in. And we did it. And so we've been doing that. We're hopefully going to book our first show here soon. So that's all the current projects. I'm sure I'm forgetting something and someone's going to be like, you dick. But,
we were in a band for 8 years together.
Right.
We went on tour in Europe.
Right. But yeah, way too many bands to really name them all. Full Zenith was a favorite.
Oh, yeah.
I was in Comforter. That's still a band. I'm not in it anymore, but I was in Comforter. That's how Luke and I met. I'm sure you can think of some bands that I was in. Like, I know the list goes on and on. Oh, the Wax and Elect. That's the one I was thinking of. We didn't break up. We've never broken up. We're just like doing our fourth hiatus, in 2 decades. But the Wax and Electoral, that's, if you've never heard that one, that was one where we, and again, this is where I mentioned earlier, like, I love pretension. Often I don't participate in pretentiousness because I don't think I can back it up. But this band, I think, is pretentious. It's like violin, cello, piano, drums, guitar, all that stuff.
Pedals and suitcases.
Yeah, exactly. And we write a 30-minute piece and we play it like twice, and then we break up again for 3+ years. And then someone says, hey, I just got a divorce. I'd love to get together. We're like, yeah, let's fucking do it. So then we all get in the same room and we write another 30-minute piece and we play it 2 or 3 times. And we're like, okay, like, see you in a couple of years. And so Jacqueline and Jill, the strings players, we've been getting together and getting food the past couple months, just once or twice, and so I think something's probably going to end up happening there again. That would be cool.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. People are always like, do you have recorded material? And I'm like, yep, but you'll never hear it. We don't release it,
Yeah.
And people are like, that's so stupid. I'm like, I know,
Yeah.
It's so stupid. So yeah, I don't know if I'm skipping anything. I mean, again, I know I'm skipping something, but there's a lot of bands where we had 6 shows but never recorded anything. I was in Brave Youth for a little while. There's Admiral Akbar. Lots of things throughout the years. But I think those are the notable ones probably.
Yeah. Pleasures of the Flesh is one of my absolute favorite projects of yours.
Wow, thank
I
you.
love I think it's the latest record of yours.
The 15 short songs?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
That one was just so, I know the instrumentation was so huge to me. It was like, it was like cinematic.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it was really special to me. I mean, there was just like even like the spaces in between the tracks felt like the transitions in between the tracks felt like it was like a mode or like pause, like in music where it's like and the breath and then it comes in huge
Oof.
back again. And I was like, oh,
That's what we're going for.
Love that. I love that. So
I love that band, and obviously Shitfire is the band that like is doing stuff, so I don't get to put as much focus on Pleasures, and not that I want to take. I love Shitfire too so much, but a lot of times, when I meet somebody, I'm like, yeah, if you have any time and want to check out this other band, I'm in Pleasures, and so often people come back and they're like, this is great. Why don't you do more with it? And I'm like, there just isn't enough time.
Yeah,
like. And the thing is, Pleasures are my friends. We get together every Sunday, whether we actually practice or not. We get together and hopefully play music and maybe don't, but still hang out. We're writing a record. And I say this about everything that I'm a part of, when it's in the time where it's pertinent. But like, it will be the best thing that I've ever had a hand in when it's released. I truly believe that. The songs are like I don't know that I've been so emotionally vulnerable. And Cadillac Young's kind of the same deal. I feel like I'm emotionally vulnerable with that band too. But they're kind of crossing over where I've written Cadillac Young songs and been like, I think there should be a Pleasures version. And I've never done that. I've always been very like, this is the Pleasures me. This is the Cadillac Young me. They do not meet, none of them meet. And then I think Shitfire broke that barrier because it was like, oh, it's just the same people. We just shifted. But yeah, this Pleasures record we're writing, I wrote a song one morning, and cried the whole time, which is very weird for me. Not crying, I love to cry, but writing a song and crying. And I took it to practice, and I was like, I want to show you all the song. It's gonna be so cool. And then I cried the whole time I was trying to play it to them. Wow. And I wasn't like, oh, it's so beautiful. It was like about my grandpa's dying and shit. But like, it's that type of thing where all these new songs are like so just personal. I feel like for so long, everything I was writing, I tried to be so big about. I tried to write about such bigger than me subjects, and Kyle, very often the other main lyric writer, he's always like, you should just write personal shit, like you're good at it. And I think I've always been like, no, I don't want to be vulnerable in that way. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh my god, this vulnerability is the most fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to every band I'm in is in the middle of writing something and hopefully releasing it soon, or we just finished recording and again hopefully releasing it soon. But I'm very much looking forward to the Pleasures one because you can point to certain songs and be like, this was this day in my life, this was this week in my life or whatever. So that's a cool feeling.
Yeah, it's great, especially this is throughout all music, but especially in punk and hardcore. It's a genre that really lends itself to having those being raw with your audience or being vulnerable with your audience moments that really act as like a conduit for these negative emotions, especially with with young people. But just I say young people because that's like a very emotionally charged time in our lives where you feel like no one else feels like how I feel or knows what I experience until you hear that song. That's like speaks so much truth to what you're going through that you feel a camaraderie, like an emotional connection with this person you may have never met, but also that hardcore and punk, it really lends itself to being really raw and with your audience. And that is a way to get those negative emotions out in a positive way, and, talking about these big subjects, I know often for me, when I do some songwriting, I don't get that same kind of catharsis with myself personally and emotionally than if I talk about a specific moment in time or event that happens with me, because these emotions oftentimes, if they stay inside, they either damage what's inside or they go out and we take it out on people who love us the most,
Oh,
even
yeah.
though we don't mean to. But if you can, there's a third way, you can get it out through expression, through art
100%.
in a positive way. It's like the reason why we see, what looks like a really scary mosh pit or people killing each other in the pit, but then at the end of it, they're hugging and, best friends and just laughing
Absolutely.
at it's like people don't understand like that relationship. They're like, well, do they like each other or not? It's
Yeah.
like they're family. And they understand that they're able to get the audience as well. Like that's a really cool part of punk and hardcore is that it's not just the musician who's just getting all this out on stage and through the recording. It's the audience can go out there and physically get it out of themselves as well. And like you
Totally.
feel a portion of that weight lifted as an audience member after the set's done. And you're like, wow, I kind of went through that same thing you were going through.
Those are the best moments.
Yeah. And you mentioned like how like this part of this Cadillac, the Pleasures Cadillac doesn't often meet like the Caddy Young or like these two people, but the punk scene, isn't just like three chords anymore,
Oh,
like
for sure.
it's a lot of punk acts are blending genres in unexpected ways, including the acts that you're in. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on this genre bending in punk, and do you feel like it's the natural evolution to the punk ethos for you? Does it end up back like to like three chords kind of era, like, or like where do you think this goes from here?
I think there's nothing more punk rock than genre bending. I think there are a lot of people right now that are like in their either late 30s. I'm 37, but I don't feel I'm this way, mid 40s, even 50s, that are like stuck on this, like, we are playing punk. We're bringing punk back to punk. And, like,
Yeah.
when I was 15, it was really funny to be snotty and like throw your junk around with your friends and stuff, And then like you grow and you change and people are like, that makes certain people uncomfortable. That's sexual assault, like, and if you're a good person, you go, oh shit, okay, you're right. I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm changing, I'm growing. The idea that like 3-chord guitar driven distorted yelling is the most punk rock is just like so old person to me, like when I hear hip hop nowadays, I'm like, this is fucking punk. Like these kids, they got these machines, like you said, they got this cheaper machine and they're like figuring out how to make beats, on a computer. Not that we didn't do that same thing, but like they're doing it to a whole other level, obviously.
Yeah, they're getting like children's keyboards and making them into MIDI instruments.
Totally.
Just like anything you find at Goodwill, it's like I make a MIDI instrument out of this.
And they're not doing it to be nerdy. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Like Dan Serkey plays music off a Game Boy, and I think that's super cool. But he does that because he's like, I can do this because I'm weird and interesting. Like these kids are like, this is a necessity. I have no other way to
out
make
of
music.
Necessity. Yeah.
There's nothing more punk rock than that. Like obviously, subject matter can change whether I feel like something is punk. Like I think that you have to be progressive and open-minded and stuff like that, to qualify for what I think should be punk rock.
Yeah,
not that
most
like,
of all inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that the modern punk community is and hardcore too. For a long time, my vendetta against hardcore was I felt like it all kind of like me, not exactly like me. I'm a little weird and flamboyant, but you know what I mean? Like it was like very white dudes with fucking army cuts. And I think that for its time, that might have been a statement that like I can't know because it was before my time maybe, but like nowadays the punk and hardcore scene, I mean it's very inclusive. At least in Louisville, I can't speak for everywhere. The places I played outside of Louisville feel very inclusive. It still feels like punk is the place that people can go to be weird in themselves. Weird in a good way, obviously. I mean, weird can be good or bad. I'm saying I love weird, so when I say weird, I mean it in a good way.
Mhm.
I don't want to sound rude. People are fucking weird. But yeah, I think that like Y-Doms, for example, That was the coolest set. And the idea, like, I mean, I don't even know what y'all call yourselves, but it was almost like it wasn't new metal, but like it was like you were doing things that I feel like I saw done before and associated it with things I didn't really connect with. But I've never felt more like I connected with it than watching it on a stage where, a bunch of punk kids were getting into it, and it was a room full of people of all different backgrounds and stuff. That was a really cool experience the other night playing with y'all. And that isn't the first time I've felt that. I feel like the music scene is like that a lot. There's people that were like, I really only like pop music, and they perform, where I know the next band up is going to be like a grind band, but like we're all like, that was fucking dope. Like that was cool,
Yeah.
So the 3-chord shit, I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, but like when an old man comes up to me and they're like, I like Shitfire because you're taking punk back to its roots, I'm like, fuck. Well, then I got to do something different, man, because that's like literally the last thing I want, Like that's boring to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a living, breathing entity that is constantly changing because its community is its grassroots.
Oh yeah,
is not more than any other genre, but in its nature, it is grassroots. It's local. It's not something that's like all the punks of the world like we all do this now. It's like it's very localized.
Totally.
Very much. Until things like ideology and philosophy can get involved, and it's like we all can agree that like the progressive route is the way,
for sure,
of course. And so it's really cool to see how it's evolved, and exciting to see like how it will adapt and grow
100%.
Going forward.
I feel like I've now been around enough to see like 3 or 4 waves of kids come in and be like, this is, the new thing we're doing. And it's always really cool to see. And I'm always like, if I'm being honest, I'm always like, I want to be a part of this. Like, I saw Xeon. Have you played with them?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're so good. And I watch them and I'm like, let me buy a 5-string bass and be in your band, Like, I know you don't need me, but fuck, this is so cool. I just want to be a part of it. Like,
yes.
I love it all. It's so good.
Yeah, shouts out Xeon. He's White Arms has a song with them.
Okay, cool.
Coming up or already out.
Heck yeah.
So do you still stream on Twitch?
So I haven't been recently, but it's only because I was borrowing a computer to stream, and the person finally was like, hey, I need to get that computer back. So now it's just a matter, I'm, again, I know I like digitally record, but I'm not computer savvy. I can use Excel. I can do enough on a computer. Like, I'm not a Luddite, but like, I don't know what the best computer to buy is. I don't know whether I should get a tower and a monitor or a laptop. There's just all these things. And I have plenty of friends who would be willing to hold my hand and walk me through every step of it. It's just, that's like the hurdle where I'm like, oh, I'll just sit and play acoustic guitar for a minute, and I know like I should get back to it. It's fun and it's its own community. And it fulfilled something in me that like, it's kind of its own thing. Like, I do love it. So I do plan on getting back to it, but I think what the plan is I'm building this new studio. I'm going to have a room where I just have it set up. So that was the other thing, is because I would stream in my living room, and I live with Reeves. Every night I would set it up, stream, and then I would break it down and put it away. And so it's kind of like with recording when you don't leave your stuff set up. Every night it's a new problem. Okay, for some reason the mic isn't working. Oh, it reverted back to the microphone on the computer, but the computer mic doesn't communicate with the OBS or OSB, whatever the hell it is. Like, it just I need to just set it up and leave it.
Permanent setup is the way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's the plan. I absolutely plan on getting back to it. I don't really play video games outside of streaming, but I love it. I mean, before I came over here, I played a few rounds of UFC 5, but that's but like, I love story-driven video games. I love experiencing that with other people in the chat. Oh my fucking God. I was playing someone from the chat who's also a great friend of mine, Devin, had suggested I play Final Fantasy VIII. So that was the last game that I was regularly playing when I had to give the computer back. I never finished it. So I'm like, when I get back, that's the first game I'll, pick up and see what the hell happens. So yeah, the long-winded version of that is I don't currently, but I absolutely will be again.
Yeah, always enjoyed your streams and
Well,
love
thank
seeing you.
you.
And you said so you. I was gonna that you kind of touched on to my next question of whether you like more comfy video games or competitive video games,
So
and but you also don't play them much outside of streaming.
yeah, so I have at times. I currently am not, but I know this is weird for me. I feel like this doesn't line up with my personality. I fucking hate cozy video games. I love if I'm in a room with somebody and they're playing a cozy video game, it's like really cozy for me to like lay under a blanket and watch them play, and that's cool. But if I'm playing on the controller, I'm like, whose head am I cutting off? Like, what can I do to further this dramatic story? I played have you ever played Thimbleweed Park?
Timbleweed Park.
I think it's called Thimbleweed Park.
Oh no, I don't think I have.
It's like a murder mystery. It's kind of, I mean, it's a 8-bit game, but it's side scroller murder mystery RPG. It's not really, I don't know if it's an RPG, but you make decisions and you read people's what they say and you make choices based off what you're trying to solve this mystery. I love stuff like that, and I love fucking sneaking around, hiding in boxes and snapping people's necks. Like any of that's fun too. UFC 5. I have played an egregious amount of martial arts video games. Like I don't condone violence. I'm not against it either, really. But I love martial arts, and so I love the UFC games. But I hate competitive gaming. I like it because I like to role play as the people in the game. That's the fun part to me is the theater of it all, which I know probably sounds silly, but like when I play against someone and like they're just like spamming a leg kick and then spamming like jumping knees, I'm like, this isn't realistic. Like you're not playing your character right, so yeah, it's still the theater of it all for me, like more than the competition. I don't, my friends would always be like, come over and play Mario Kart. And I was always like, I fucking hate Mario Kart. I love Mario. Mario is my all-time favorite game. Like any game that Mario's involved in that's not a competition. I mean, hell, I even love Mario Tennis, and that is a competition. But like, that one game where you pick a character and you fight. Can't remember what it's called, but
Smash Bros.
Smash Bros. Fuck, I hate Smash Bros. People are always like, come over and smash, bro. And I'm like, oh my God, like that is the most brainless. I'm just button mashing and somehow I'm beating all y'all's asses. Like this is weak,
Right.
But like I love Mario Party because it's like, oh, it's all these fun little games. And then at the end, it doesn't matter. They're going to fucking give somebody extra stars and you're not going to win. So that's fun. But yeah, so for the most part, I like story-driven action oriented video games.
Yeah, I feel I see I kind of like both, and depending on like how I feel, but I definitely relate to like having like a mission in a video game. I have to go here to here and experience a really cool curated story.
Totally,
like love that, and especially I've always found myself really. And this is like not a very like action oriented game, but just having the speech option types of games where like your decisions matter. You played a Telltale game by that studio called The Walking Dead.
Yes.
That was really phenomenal.
I cried during a part of that. That's a great game.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean that whole series, The Walking Dead, but they also have Wolf Among Us and a few others that are just phenomenal that that from unexpected intellectual properties that I don't know anything about this, but man, this game is really, really great.
Totally.
And I think it goes back to that kind of Mass Effect kind of structure where you have all these speech options. There's good, bad, neutral. You have the choice to say nothing at all. And so I really love like what those are. And games are absolutely like video games are an art within themselves. Of course, there's so many pieces of hidden art that we find, like it just like the sound design, and the video game soundtrack itself.
Totally.
But it's do you find yourself paying extra attention to like the background music in video games or the sound designs of movies, like that now that you have like a background in audio engineering?
Um, Only sometimes, as far as trying to approach it as an audio engineer. I do when I'm like, I try to immerse myself in art. So if it's a movie, I try not to pick apart anything. I'm just taking in what they're giving me at face value. You know, I'm obviously like thinking about like, oh, why would they say that? Is there more to it? But like, I try not, if people are in the middle of a deep conversation and there's like a string section in the background, I try not to be like, oh, let me listen to the strings, you know, because I'm just like, the strings are there to provide, you know, whatever tension the conversations I need to be focusing on. But after like a second viewing or whatever, or again, I know I've already mentioned it once, TikTok is where I get the appreciation for that stuff, where like someone will point out, you know, in the soundtrack for this movie, every scene that's here, there's like this mode that they revisit, you know, and it's definitely not something that I would ever notice, but it, uh, it, when I recognize it, I'm like, that's so fucking cool. And now I have to tell everybody about it, because that's another level of art. But I definitely in the past, like video game music in particular, the Super Mario Land, which is a original Game Boy game, like the big gray one. The last track after you beat the game used to be this phenomenal little 8-bit song, just do 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 do. Yeah, I could go on. But I would play the game. Yeah, I would do this fucking twice a week. I'd play the game, and then like, you fly in this plane. I'm pretty sure you're flying in a plane, and it just does the song forever unless you turn the game off. Like, you know, first it's like showing who created it, and then afterwards you're just flying forever and the song's playing. And I would beat the game and then just like lay there and listen. And I mean, it's maybe like a 2-minute track that repeats, and I would listen to it for 45 minutes. You know, I was just like, this is the coolest song ever. So yes, in that way, I think that I take in and appreciate that stuff, but I don't try to be overly critical because of my audio engineering background. I think that for me ruins stuff. Even when I listen to music, like, I try to just listen, you know, what did they want to give me? I very often try to shut off the part where I'm like, ooh, were they using this type of microphone? Ooh, were they, you know, until I'm like, okay, I've taken it as the art. Now let me study it, because maybe I want to recreate something similar or something, you know?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think that is the best way. What I found too is experience it as a whole, as it was intended.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, you can kind of break it down. And but some of my I took jazz in high school, and my jazz teacher said something that I'll never forget. He said, music. The audience experiences, like most people experience music as a wall of sound, but musicians experience each individual part. And ever since then, I was like, that is kind of right. And like, until once you cross the threshold, and for a while, I felt like I only, you know, kind of could, I guess you don't experience everything individually, but it's hard to experience it just as a whole without even thinking about it as much.
For sure.
But I think it's great to be able to have both sides of it, where you're like, oh, you can get newfound appreciation for a piece of art because you understand how difficult it was to do.
Totally.
I cite this a lot, but just like Foley work in audio is insane to me.
I would
That's
love
true
to do
magic.
that stuff.
Me too. Like when like Mario jumps, or like especially in modern games, like when Link swings his sword and it makes a swoosh sound, or if it like accidentally hits a rock or a piece of, like, your brain just goes, oh yeah, it's supposed to do that. Of course it makes that sound.
Totally.
And but then when you really start thinking about it, you're like, wait, somebody recorded that and then programmed it, and then to do that at that exact moment.
Totally.
And the magic, of course, with audio, that we've been told a lot, and especially in cinematography, is that when you don't notice the audio, that's when it's the best.
Right. Totally.
The best audio, like, you did an amazing job when they don't notice the audio at all.
Uh-huh.
And it's when you create that full immersion. And I think that's one phenomenal thing that video game audio engineers, have really mastered, is creating this immersion. It's like doing it so well that you forget that is even a process. Your brain just fills in and is like, it's supposed to be that way. Of course it is.
Absolutely.
That's really what I feel like is incredible about those.
Just to add on a little bit to what you said, to give, more props to mix engineers, I think, like what you brought up about, like, it's a wall of sound, but musicians can pick and choose what they hear, whatever. I think that's where mix engineers are so impressive, because, like, I know Ben Moore, the guy that mixes most stuff for me, I have sent him tracks where, I sent it all at the same level. I didn't give him any prompts. I didn't give him any, like, reference for how I wanted it mixed. But in my head, I was like, yeah, it's a guitar-driven verse, like there's a keyboard playing in the background, but I played the guitar, so it's a guitar-driven verse. It's like the ego in artistry. And he sends back a mix, and like the guitar is like down here, and the keyboard's here, and all of a sudden I'm like, damn, that keyboard part's really cool. I recorded it and don't remember, but like he goes, oh no, like the guitar is not the thing people should be listening to here. It's the keyboard. And then, so obviously that's what you hear first because it's in the front. And then after like 3 listens, the keyboard's there. You start to go, oh shit, there's that guitar there. That's really fucking cool. And I think that's cool that, like, a mixer can tell you what you should hear first. The mixer can tell you what the important part of the song is. But then after you, like, know it well enough, you start to say, oh no, like this is here. Oh man, I did this the other day. I recorded a, what is it called? A casaba? Is that the little, it's like a circle with metal beads on a stick. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. I have no idea what that's called.
A cabasa. I think it's called a cabasa. I kept calling it a bunch of different things. But I got a cabasa, and I recorded this part, and there's already jingle bells on the track. There's my drums. There's a ride, we're each, like, the jingle bell's only on the 1, the ride's on like the 1 and the 3, the kick is on the 1 and the 3 too. I think, I'm just spitballing here. And the cabasa, I do this like shuffle, type beat. And then I like buried it. And every time I would show somebody, I would be like, check this out. Listen to what I added. And they'd listen and they'd be like, yeah, it sounds really cool. And then I would solo it and they'd be like, I didn't even hear that. And I was like, but you felt it, And then I would unsolo it and they'd be like, oh my God, yes. Like, I absolutely, I feel that, because the shuffle like changes. Like, you're not just on the downs anymore. You're like, there's some movement to it. And so that's something I learned from Travis from Pleasures. Like, a lot of things like that, rhythm, percussion things, they're meant to be felt and not heard. But then at some point you can zero in and go, oh shit, like I totally hear that. And, that's going to be up to Ben Moore to like properly place. Obviously, I will give him mixed notes on that because it's very important to me. But you just made me think about things like that, how a mix engineer can like totally change what you think the focus of something should be, and maybe for the better, really like make something shine in a way that you didn't expect when you even wrote it.
Yeah, I think that's the important of having fresh eyes and having like a team, I guess fresh ears in this case,
right.
But having like a team of people that something can go through, because all of us have blinders in some way when it comes to certain things, and definitely. Especially if we have, and just like in that moment, he heard those keys and we're like, these keys though, and he kind of puts you in the background where you hadn't expected, but that's a magical moment. And when you were talking, I was thinking about how audio engineers, mixing, when you're mixing, they can hide things that are to be revealed later.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's being felt and not heard at that moment. You actually are experiencing and hearing it, but I guess you're not hearing it like but you are experiencing this this a piece of the puzzle that you're not sure what that is or why, or even that you're feeling this for this particular reason. And there's something that we get to do, or something that we can experience way more than others, that is that moment where, like, I've had this with other people, where you do solo out that one instrument and they're like, whoa, that's in there?
Right?
That's what, and then the track, right when you unmute it, the track's never the same again.
Yeah, absolutely.
From that point on, it's never the same.
Absolutely.
You can never unhear that. And we've all experienced that in a negative way, where you're like, oh God, now that I know that that's in there, or like that I hear myself like going in between each, like I can never unhear myself doing that. But it's what's never really talked about is those things that those elements that we aren't even aware of until they're revealed to us. But it's like revealed to us consciously.
Yeah.
It's always there subconsciously.
Totally.
That's really cool. As a tracking engineer who's also a performer, do you feel like your time on stage has made you a better recording engineer, or do you take elements from that and incorporate them both one way or the other?
I'm sure that hearing that question another day, I could have a different answer. But right now, I feel like I separate them very much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I track other bands, like, for the most part, and maybe I'm just going to change what I'm saying. For the most part, I feel like I approach it, like not in a performing aspect or anything like that. But I guess something I think that makes me think of this, the other day I was tracking Stars and Adam was playing this guitar part, and the way he was moving his fingers, and I don't remember, the actual part, but let's say like it's a picking thing, and then you lift your pinky, and then you lift this, your ring finger, and then you fret like the 4th fret and then the 7th fret with the pinky before going down to the 2nd fret. And I remember I watched him and he was struggling and he kept like messing it up essentially. And at one point I was like, hey, this is weird. Like, don't let me step on your toes. If I were playing that, I would definitely not play the 4th fret with my ring and then the 7th with my pinky. I would play the 4th and slide up to, it would all be done on my pointer finger, and then you slide down to the 2, however you feel like it. And so I remember making that note, and he changed how he did it. And, he's a better guitar player than I am. I'm really not. It's not like I was like, let me school you on how to play guitar. But there was just one instance where I was watching, I was like, oh man, like I would have fretted that differently if I were playing it. And I think of it a lot of times as like, I would have done it more lazy. Like maybe that's the right way. And I didn't take a lot of or any guitar lessons, so I don't know the right way. Again, the right way. But he did it, and it made it sound better. It sounded smoother and less like clunky. So maybe in that respect, I will go back on what I said. Yes, I think that because of recording, I think about performing differently. I think, oh man, like the way you're playing that doesn't sound very smooth. How can you get more sustain out of your picking? How can you, like with the de-essing things? So yeah, I guess I don't know if you said which one should influence the other, but they influence each other for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's, that's just that's a point of mentorship, I feel like, as well, just helping somebody out, and like, I think that's one thing that can make recording with you over, somebody else more special, just because sometimes I can be somewhat guilty of this. If I see somebody struggling, I'll maybe offer, but I try to, because of what I've been shown, what artists want is kind of me to be like a blank slate, just honestly like a conduit or a tool for them to use to capture their music and art. And so, because the thing that I went into audio engineering, and I still am, but just like kind of highly against because I'd worked with so many of them, but the audio engineer that has to insert themselves into every mix, I hear it in all sorts of ways. Like sometimes the classic thing I hear is this guy I was recording with, like, I thought the take was good. He's like, you do it again. you can do it better than that. You can do it better than that. But it's like, why that? I don't think that should be their decision.
For sure.
If there was like, oh, I heard somebody shot a gun in the background, or like
Right.
a car backfired in the background for that one, you should say something. But I heard that a lot, and I heard this from a band that I'm recording right now. We talked about drum tracking earlier. It's with this band, but they said, yeah, the last guy we're with, the record sounded great, but he always, you usually records, and he's in a pop band. But we had like an emo record, but he like made our record sound like a pop record. Just he was, and it's just where I guess the engineer should never superimpose their tastes onto somebody else's art.
Definitely.
And that happens, that it's hard to kind of insert yourself and your personality into a tracking mix.
Totally.
Unless you're like, you record with, I only record this kind of microphone because it sounds like it's underwater and I want everything to sound saturated or something like that. But you have so much more control behind the wheel as the mixing engineer. It's like you can, as you said, change a track so dynamically and so drastically just by taking one instrument and another instrument and changing their volume.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, whoa, how does that?
Oh yeah.
And so I really try to myself be just a blank slate, and I only open that door for me to be like, you should do this when I'm invited.
Definitely.
And but I think that's a moment where that guitarist is going to play it that way probably for the rest of their life, and remember that chord structure can be played like this, and it's okay to slide, for this part. But I think we always kind of want to have these, we really love to hear these kind of tips and tricks from people who are more experienced than us, or just when we're struggling like that. So I think that's a, absolutely positive thing that you had done there. And moving on to a completely different topic.
Hell yeah.
Here's a deep one. Do you ever feel like making or listening to music taps into something deeper about consciousness and the nature of reality?
I don't know that I'm fully smart enough to grasp what you want out of that question, but the answer is yes. The answer is definitely yes, and hopefully you can give me a few more prompts, and then I will elaborate on how I feel.
Do you have the feeling, because of course we don't know, we're so in the dark on this, but do you feel as though when you create music, you are there's something in a psychology and study of consciousness called dualism, where it's the belief that consciousness exists outside of the body and not just locally inside. Almost like it's like I believe. I think this is a really good way to put it. That consciousness is cloud based.
Oh shit!
And the local network is just wiring to almost like an antenna to able to become a node of this cloud system. And so a part of the network of the cloud system. And so have you gotten the feeling that you're tapping into something outside of yourself when you create music? Like I cite like the phenomenon when we have like an idea, or like say a song idea, and it's so good, there's no way you forget it. And you're like, I love that riff is amazing. I got it right here. And you don't rush to the voice memo, which we all do now because we know that. And we had this happen where that amazing idea just moments later is gone, as if it never belonged to you in the first place, or as if it didn't reside from inside. And it can be idea or song riff, but you can't believe it's gone. It was so good. And it's just gone, and there's no way to get it back. And so now we rush to our voice memo and we go, and just like sing it to it into there. And so, what are your thoughts on that phenomenon?
Okay, so yes, I definitely believe. Hopefully, I answer your question. It's like religion for some people. I think that for some people, religion feels like a deeper connection than a physical thing. You know, they feel like when they're in a room full of other people praying, there's like this, you know, I'm not speaking for them necessarily, and I'm going to use my own understanding of it, but you know, imagine like there's a vibration that they're all like riding those same waves, you know, while they're speaking to the same God and blah blah blah. And I feel like music is no different. Like when we're in a room and someone's, you know, ripping chords at us, like, you know, I'm experiencing it my way and they're experiencing it their way, but we're doing it together. It's like it's linking us all to the same thing, even though we aren't experiencing it the same way exactly, because everyone has their own experiences and references for everything. But yeah, I definitely think there's like, this is going to be a little off topic, but I think it still connects. I think there's like a greater, like certain melodies or something are just like, that's like the language of the universe. And this is going to be a terrible example. This is not a band I listened to ever, actually. But earlier at the gym, Phantom Planets, I don't know what the song's called. Maybe it's called California, but that song, California, you know what I'm talking about?
I believe
the melody's like, do 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 do.
Oh, yeah.
That came on, and I was like, I think when this person wrote, and again, this is not a band I listen to, like, you know, this can speak to like how good an art is and still not like personally connect to me. But I said to my, you know, friend that we were working out, I said, I bet when the person wrote this, like, he knew this is bigger than me, you know, like, I don't know any of the other songs on that record because they did, I mean, and they might be great songs. He actually said, he was like, it's a great record. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, but I think that song, like that melody and the chorus melody, you know, California, like, again, this is not a band I care about. I'm not like really, I didn't come in here to preach their, you know, amazingness. It's just relevancy, regency. But like, holy shit, that song is amazing and simple. And that's the thing, I was listening to it, I was like, man, like when you listen to the verse, it's like a piano, a bass, and drums. And like if there are other things, they're unintelligible over some YMCA speakers, you know, so they don't matter like to the grander mix. Like it sounds good because it's so bare. And I think there's a lot of songs actually where I think just universally, I bet a lot of people would agree, like that is like the most simplistic way to speak to a mass group of people. I'm not saying that song specifically, even though like I think it's fucking intensely good. But you know, I just think there's certain things, not that I even care about it, but that I don't know who sings it because I don't care about it. Maybe it's Billy Joel, Sweet Caroline.
Oh, yeah.
Bum, bum. You know, I remember being at a bar once, like 21 years old, and the whole crowd did it, and I was like, what the fuck? You know, I didn't know that. I didn't listen to that shit.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yeah, like that's, everybody does that part at that part. You know, now I think it's like at this point, we all like, you're a douchebag if you enjoy things like that. But like, that's fucking awesome that like you could be in a crowd of people and hit play on that song, and like we are all gonna connect and do the same thing. And again, we're gonna, you know, experience it different because we don't have the same brains, but like we're all gonna be connected in these certain moments through music or art. So yeah, I hope that in a roundabout way I'm getting what you're picking up. I think that there's something more than just like a surface level, like this is a melody, because I could write 10 melodies right now that are just fine. And you're going to be like, yeah, that's great. And maybe you'll hum one of them, you know, and then you'll forget it in a couple of days. But there's certain ones that I feel like you can recall from like the first time you ever heard it and you still think about it. And like, you're not original. And I don't mean that in a rude way, like you're original in plenty of ways, but you know, like that melody just is like a universal. It's like that. What's the tablet or whatever with like the Rosetta Stone, where they were like, we're going to put all these languages together. There's like certain melodies where I just feel like it's like that belongs on the Rosetta Stone of music, because anybody could hear that and be like, oof, that, that speaks to me deeply.
Yeah. I that's a fantastic answer. And
thank you.
I really resonated with the what you said about when you're at a concert and you're playing the music and everybody's kind of on the same frequency. It is kind of like monks at like a monastery, and they're all, it's like a vibration or a frequency. We'll call it a frequency, and it's like everybody's kind of on this, like at that same level and tapping into the same thing at the same. It's almost like a radio station.
Definitely.
And you can put a bunch of strangers in a room and they go on that same ride of consciousness together at a concert, and the elevations of emotion, like all being syncopated together. There's something to that is really, really special. And there seems to be a through line there of connecting of what maybe consciousness could be, that is something that can be tapped into, like a communal consciousness, a collective consciousness, but in like almost nodes of consciousness, to where are certain frequencies that when you dialed into, when there's like frequency of like everybody, like you could, it's like when there seems to be like something like when you walk into a room and you may not have seen anything almost about the room, but you can tell that there's tension in the air. We even say like you can cut it with a knife.
Oh yeah.
There's something to that is that we're accessing without our traditional senses.
Absolutely.
That is really cool. But I love the idea of comparing the monastery to the punk rock show, because there is still a communal collective consciousness happening together, where we're experiencing something on the same frequency. And it's pretty incredible that you can do that for a room of people, and it starts with just you and an idea and a guitar. I think that's one of the first things that I love seeing over and over again recording brand new musicians, is that feeling like when they have this thought in their head, they have this idea for a song, and the very first time they hear it back manifested into reality.
Yeah.
They're like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
I thought of this here.
Oh, yeah.
And then I made it in reality.
Oh,
and
totally.
now other people are experiencing it near to or exactly how I imagined it, or better than, in some cases, how I imagined it in my head and what it made me feel. It's like you're able to take an emotion, an experience, something that you usually can only be absorbed through like time and relationships or whatever the circumstances are, and give it to somebody for them to experience from your point of view.
Totally.
And it's really incredible, and that seems to happen outside of music as well. And I think there's like, it's an alternate state of consciousness, like we've all experienced when we're creating a song. That time seems to flow by or fly by.
Yes.
I think a lot of people call it flow state.
Okay, I have heard that term. I didn't know that was what that was.
Flow states, like, whether you're reading a book or you're, in my case, like mixing a song, and
you get locked in.
And you're locked in, and then you look over and you're like, it's been how long?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. My perception of time had completely changed.
Definitely.
And you'll be shocked every time. You're like, well, how did hours? And it seems that that's an alternate state of consciousness, like the concert's already over kind of feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody whose mom brought them, they're like, the concert's not over already.
Yeah.
Or the bored boyfriend or girlfriend or partner who gets like brought along to the show, they're like, I can't believe this isn't over already. Where some kid having the time of his life, like, I want this, I can't, like, this has just got started. I can't want this to last forever.
Absolutely.
So you can absolutely be outside of that as well. So when you are writing these songs for any of your projects, do you find that you enter this almost alternate state of consciousness where you have found that time kind of flies by?
Yeah, I don't know so much about time. like, yes, time, but I think more than time, like emotions, everything will. I think that like creating art, and I'm sure a lot of people, maybe would never phrase it this way, but experience something similar where like you're in this state, and the idea of creating art is to get out of that state, state of mind. Um, so, maybe like you're feeling crummy about a situation, so you're inspired, luckily, so you start creating this thing. Hopefully by the time you've created it, you're no longer in that state. You're not feeling, maybe the thing still sucks, but you have a new way of thinking about it, or you're just like out of that state. Maybe here you were like, I'm feeling crummy and I don't feel like doing anything, but I'm going to force myself to do this thing. Or maybe the thing forces me to do it, because I think a lot of times art, like literally, I'm like, can I just quit thinking of melodies? Like I'd like to just, it used to be when I worked at UPS, I just need to drive this forklift for 4 hours with no melodies popping in my head because I have no way to record it. And, every day I'm fucking calling my phone, doodle doodle bug, and like, so that's what I meant by sometimes it, forces you to do it. But like, I think the idea is, at least for me, and again, I can only assume other people, is, hopefully art will take this thing that I'm feeling and turn it into this, or get me through this. And in doing so, also time will have passed. For me, it isn't, I'm never thinking about time, and time doesn't really factor. Time's not a big deal for me. Like, I just have the privilege that luckily I have a lot of time that I get to kind of fuck with my art. But there are a lot of times where I'm like, oh man, I'm like feeling this type of way, and I would like to explore that through whatever I'm doing. And by the end of it, hopefully whatever type of way I'm feeling is like a new type of way. Oh, and it just so happens that it was a 2-hour time span. So I know it's kind of shifting what you're asking, but I think for me, it's like, I'm sure other people might look at it more like time related, but for me, it's state related, and working on art. I mean, same thing with band practice. Even if you're playing the same song, like I might walk into band practice and be like, yeah, today was a mad day. And then Luke shows up and makes a fart joke, and Hannah and I are talking about something cool, and Brady shares a good part of his day, and Cliff makes some clever joke, and all of a sudden 3 hours later I'm like, man, like I'm in a great fucking place, like the rest of the day was whatever, and this last 3 hours has made it to where I'm gonna say, yes, today was great. What a great day, and again, like time did lapse, but what more importantly lapsed was like I grew and changed, and my attitude got better. And that's not always the case, but I think more often than not, like who I am after experiencing art is a better version of who I was previous to experiencing the art.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's excellently put. It is. It would be nice to be able to create music knowing that you'll only be able to create it in those states.
Oh, yeah.
I see myself included, but I think we all go through this at some point where there's nothing better than like writing a love song when you're in love, and then the breakup song when you've broken up. The
Love
heartbreak song. It feels good, but when these states don't last forever. And so if you don't complete the project within that state, it's almost like, and now you're feeling this way. It's, well, I'm not feeling the breakup anymore. I just got into it. So if you're out of a breakup going into a relationship and you're trying to finish the breakup album or project, it's like, how do I tap into that? And it does come from a lot of discipline, but a lot of times to like finish that project and kind of, like kind of turn on that faucet of that heartbreak, even though you're in a honeymoon love kind of state. But it tempts us to kind of just drop that what we had there and then move to what we're currently experiencing. I think that is something that everybody kind of goes through, and in your own journey, you decide what you want to do. If you're like, I gotta finish this, thought or this project,
right,
even though I'm not feeling that way anymore. And I think that's a separation from when people make a piece of music or an art and they look back on it after a little bit of time and be like, I don't even relate to that person anymore. I don't relate to that. And that happens a lot when you first get started, when you're younger and you're progressing so fast as a musician that something you recorded 2 months ago would be like, I don't even really, that's not even me anymore. I don't want to put that into a world, not because it's not how I'm feeling currently, but it's because I don't even agree with that person anymore or how it was done. So I think it's good to know those different states, for all those listening out there. It's really good to know the difference between I don't relate to that to where I don't feel that anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's still cool knowing like maybe I don't relate to this, but someone might. And when I put this out, it'll hopefully resonate with somebody. You know, I think that's what art's so cool for is knowing that like I remember Cursive put out a song on the Ugly Organ. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember someone brought it to me and said, "What's this song about?" And I listened. Oh no, well, this happened twice. But the one that I was actually referencing in my head was Me Without You. They put out a song on their first record. And they brought the song. They said, what do you think this is about? And I listened to it a few times. And line for line, I could tell you why it was about a woman having to get an abortion. Like, that's what it was. I don't know what I was experiencing in life that I could link every poetic line in a poetic way back to this situation. And I said that, and I felt, at the time, like, I'm right. This is art. I'm right. And they were like, holy shit, I think it's about this. And it was like the most not what I thought it was about thing, and I was just like, whoa, like, art is, again, it sounds stupid now, but I was like way younger. And I was just like, art is like, what the fuck? Like, I experienced it this way, you experience it this way. Neither of us is right or wrong, and one of us was probably closer to right, depending on how what Aaron Weiss was writing about. I never wanted to know. I never wanted to know what he meant by it because I thought it was so cool that like I can still go and listen and be like, yeah, it's about this because of this, and whoever could probably still go listen to it and be like, oh, it's about this for these reasons. And so I think that no matter what Aaron wanted when he wrote it, it's so cool that that's just a tiny example of two Kentucky kids listening to it. Like, who knows what the rest of the world got from it when they listened to it, so just to tack on that to what you said, because I think that's another really cool part of art is every one of our experiences, short and long term, molds what we get out of the art, no matter what I wanted, no matter what state I was in when I put it out into the ether. Like, it's gonna mean something entirely different to people with different experiences.
Yeah, who are in different states as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that it is fascinating to knowing that other people's art and your art will be perceived and interpreted, maybe more oftentimes than not completely differently than how you intended it to be. And there's a Kendrick Lamar did something a while back that I thought was just genius, and it's to play on that idea that your art will be interpreted in some way, and it won't necessarily always be like what you intended for it to be. And so he kind of took that idea and he's like, I'm going to have a surface layer of like what this song is going to appear to be. And then under that, there'll be like, once you just dig a little bit underneath that soil, there's going to be a whole like mantle of what the song is really about. And it's a simple song you've probably heard before. It's called Swimming Pools. Okay. Pour up, drank, headshot, drank.
Yeah.
That song on its surface is a party song about how fun it is to party and drink alcohol.
Right.
But it's really about the dark side of alcoholism and like party culture.
What?
But like right on the surface, it's you just hear the hook and you're like, yes, let's party, let's go. And everybody at the party's having a good time and everybody listens to it on a surface level. But as soon as you just dig a little deep into it, just like listen, you're like, oh, this is completely opposite of what this is about. So it's cool that artists have gone so far as to knowing that expectations will be subverted and play on that as part of it. So, and like having different layers
I think
to their songs.
It's also cool that he, hopefully I assume wrote it with that intent and that somebody figured it out. I think that would be my big thing is if I did write it and like, oh, this has a deeper meaning. Like, what if no one ever, figures it out? They're just like party song of the century.
Yes, exactly.
So that's cool.
Yeah, and I think music is so critiqued these days that people are going to have I mean, especially in hip hop and rap music. There's just, I mean, when the Drake Kendrick stuff was dropping, there was like, it seemed like 2-3 minutes after the songs had dropped, those disses, there was lyric by lyric breakdowns of analyzing in depth of like how all these songs were, and it was really fascinating to see like. Out of all the negativity, there was some positivity because young people were thinking about lyricism for maybe some of them the first time, thinking deeply about lyricism,
totally,
and learning how how songs can be structured and not just like this sentence means this. It could be something that gets referenced much later, and storytelling within lyricism. And so that was really cool to see as well. But you've seen Louisville's music scene evolve over the years. What's what's one change that you've noticed in Louisville's scene since when you first started out, and what's something that has continually stayed the same?
I think that when I first started out, it was only white guys playing music. That's obviously not totally true, and I can think of a handful of people that don't fit that mold, but like the fact that I can think of a handful of people that don't fit that mold means clearly there was not enough diversity. Now I think that is, there's still a bunch of white guys, but it is like so much more diverse and inclusive than it was when I started. I don't know that I would say it wasn't inclusive, but I know that other people that I care about would say it was not inclusive. So although it felt inclusive to me, because when I showed up to that room, I was like, oh my gosh, like there are different people all here in this room experiencing this together. I also know that at least back then, a lot of those people still didn't feel comfortable. Like they were there because they felt the most comfortable there maybe, but they weren't like, they didn't feel like they were on the same level as me, which is, terrible. And I have people I care about in life who, I've talked about like the Louisville punk community is like the most inclusive space I've ever been in. And, they're like, well, as a, I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but as a person that is not a white guy, that's absolutely not how I felt when I was 13, and so I think that's a big change is there's a lot more diversity. There's a lot more what I think is genuine inclusivity. Hopefully I'm not wrong about that. That's probably the biggest change, I think, is that I think there's been a big enough shift that like not only is it not just white guys, but we recognize, because I'm just a white guy. Like for a long time, I was just like living and like unaware that I was just a white guy or being the whitest guy, in the room or whatever. And like, so, for a kid from Dixie Highway to be able to be like, oh, I recognize that, and I'm not giving myself props. Like it probably came way too late. But I'm just saying, I think that, if I can sit here and say that, hopefully a lot of people are having that same realization and trying to make a space more comfortable for people. So that would be a positive change in the scene, or a change, I guess I would say. And then something that stayed the same. That's so hard because so much has changed. Also, if that answer sucked, you can cut it.
That was great.
But man, other than certain staple people, and I think the motivation to make our world a better place, that might be the only thing I really feel like has stayed the same. Like the sound of the music has changed. A lot of the people have changed. There's some staple people that have been coming to shows since well before I did, but have been coming, to all the ones that they were older when I was young, and now they're still older and still doing it. And now I'm the old guy. which is funny because I don't feel old, but I know when I was like 13, like a 20-year-old was fucking old. You know,
Oh,
like I
yeah.
remember being like, look at this old guy.
Yeah.
What's he doing in my basement? You know?
Yeah.
So, which obviously not at 13 did I have a show in my basement, but you get the point. But yeah, so I don't know that a lot has stayed the same other than, like I said, I think the motivations behind why we all get together. And we're still getting together because we all have a love for the music or the community or both. And we want to express ourselves and feel safe to do so. And I do think, again, maybe it wasn't a safe place or as safe a place 25 years ago, but I think that it's a pretty safe place now for people to be very expressive and weird. And again, I mean that in the best way possible. So yeah, does that answer your question? I'm not sure if I did a good job.
It does, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like the scene is more inclusive and more open-minded than ever before. I think the internet has had a big influence on that, and
Definitely.
being able to listen to bands and being also be able to network with people and have more bands tour around.
Oh yeah.
And hit your local venue or house shows. And you made me think of like some things that the scene used to have that maybe doesn't have anymore. And then I wonder, like, is it possible? Like, I wonder, there's like Brian Puckett, he created a record label locally that was really special to me. And I want to have a whole episode on it, but his legacy to me is so important because not only did he provide like a record label to release people's music on, but he provided mentorship as well. He was somebody you could always talk to, and he would tell you genuinely how he thought when other people would just be like, good set.
Totally.
He would tell you, that was a bit rough. What was going on there? What was, and it was just something that this city had that was just so unique and special, where it seemed to be everywhere else is always just like an every man for themselves, but he was like solidifying this family of people and musicians that, and instilling confidence in them, and especially me at a very young age, instilling some confidence that it's like some guy believed in me enough to put me on his record label and, put me out on tour. Like maybe I am, worth something here, you know, and maybe I can actually help other people experience that. We had talked about what's the most rewarding part of music, and it goes back to when we talked about before about like the kid who feels like nobody is experiencing what they're feeling right now and feels so isolated in the world until they hear that track that speaks that truth to what they're feeling so much that it's just undeniable, and they feel less alone in the world because of it.
Absolutely.
And that is that experience is something that will tie you to an artist for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because it's like in my moment of weakness, this was there for me. They were there for me.
Totally.
How, like, one of the first things that people who meet their who like really big artists who get people who kind of break through and are able to meet with them, and whatever the situations, one of the first thing is like, my life, you changed my life for the better,
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't know each other. You don't know me, but I feel like I feel like you understand me more than my own father does. And on so many levels. And that's what is so, special about that. And to be able to facilitate that, what Brian Puckett did with the city was just really, really special. And I don't know if we live in a world now where where that's feasible or even needed anymore to have a record label, because as DistroKid exists, TuneCore exists, CD Baby, whatever it is that you use, you can release your own music. So you don't necessarily, but I think people still need a team of people to help them. It's not just about getting it on streaming services. It's having somebody who has a network of people who can get you all these things that, tour dates, or even like just somebody who knows how to make CDs or something. It's hard to do it all by yourself. And one thing I always mention is that artists, 20, 30 years ago, they had to make music. That was your job.
Oh yeah.
today you have to be a social media manager, a videographer, photographer, editor, audio engineer. You have to do everything.
Yeah.
And it there's no way it doesn't take from the end result of the art.
Absolutely.
When, if you can just constantly just make music and just have that be your main concern, I feel like you get a better result. And that's what you see at the very top, where, the artist's job is back to being just make the art. We got a whole team of guys who are going to do all the rest for you. They'll promote it for you, especially promotion. I see that drains artists the most, is having to promote over and over and over again and try to sell themselves on the market. So,
sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, please.
To give a positive spin to modern technology, because I agree with everything you're saying, but also maybe a little bit of what artists are forced to do with their own PR nowadays adds a vulnerability and a humanity that people back then never got out of their favorite artists. Like I think about and I'm not a Beatles hater or lover. I've literally never listened to their whole catalog. Their hits are bangers. I'm not going to say they're not, but like if John Lennon had made TikToks and in those he had talked about how, peace, love, and this, but then you watch him aggressively speak to his partner, you might be like, I don't know, that dude kind of seems like a dick,
Mm-hmm.
The PR stuff that people are paid to make him look good. He seems like this fucking great hippie dude, but when you just watch him in his living room, he kind of comes off like a prick. And I don't know, I'm just saying that's made up example. But I kind of love sometimes artists I love hop up on social media and they just say something vulnerable and I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna artists I love now but didn't know, I see them do that and I'm like, man, knowing where you're coming from or why you created that gives me a reason to want to check you out. And if it weren't for TikTok, you would not have had a platform to do so. So just a positive spin on people having to do that. There's a lot of bad to it, but maybe the good out of it is that we do get, kind of in a punk rock way, we get to know people on a level that it's still only what they show us. But, if you can read between the lines, I think a lot of times you can.
Yeah. There's not a filter that everything passes through. It's
totally.
To not be able to use a better phrase, it's like a farm to table kind of situation where the art comes out from the artist and goes directly to the intended audience.
Totally.
Which is really how it should be. It should, because you're right. This, doesn't happen with local record labels, but at the very top, there's absolutely, as you're saying, there is a filter. It all goes through. It has to go through a PR team, as you said, and it's that seems like it's not the best, because we really want as an audience that unfiltered raw emotion that came from that artist.
Totally.
And and social media and people being able to be their own record label in a way allows for that. So I think that's a really good way to put it. And I think just the world we live in, the times we live in, there are so many pros and cons to all of it. We can say it's great that I love that, young people are able to just everybody's able to create art, make music, and just immediately post it, and it's out there for everybody to access. But then somebody could say, well, it's oversaturated. There's too many people, but also you can't gatekeep music or anything.
Right.
But is it creating is it pushing other people down because of social media, where in an environment where you can pay to promote something, then maybe only people who pay to promote their posts or music, then they get floated to the surface and everybody else gets kind of pushed down. And in a world where that's where people are playing in bars and getting discovered through hard work or whatever, that would be different. But it's an endless conversation of back and forth. And totally. I think just what people find themselves having to do is just adapt to that and making the best of it. And I think what we all go back to is the positive relationships we have with other people and to our audience, and finding really good experiences through mentorship and through our relationships with other artists as well as the audience. But Cadillac, do you have any upcoming projects that we should be looking out for?
I am dropping a single March 15th, I think, of next month. It's called Blemished Apprentice. It is this the one? See, earlier you brought up something about like, I'm in this state, I need to get the song out before I get out of this state. I know this is not the one, but it is this EP. This EP, I have a couple songs that I wrote over like a 3-year period, and I like started the first verse, and it's about like a breakup or whatever, and then all right, I don't know where to go with this, so I put it away, and then I come back a year later, going through a new breakup, and I'm like, fuck, like these words resonate with me so hard. God damn it,
Yeah.
like I should not be feeling this way a year later from or whatever. So the EP, it's a single next month, a single the month after in April, and then in May 15th, I'm dropping uh, an EP, a solo Cadillac Young EP called Bare My Bones.
Mm.
And the whole idea is it's a single guitar track, a single vocal track. I think that oftentimes, and I'm not shitting on like me as a musician or anything, but like it's so easy to hide behind all the other members of the band, especially in the bands I'm in. Everybody's so good at what they do. Good Lord. It's really easy to be like, I'm the songwriter, but like I'll let everybody else like really shine and I kind of just get to rock and roll, and with this, even with Cadillac Young, I'm like, Cliff, come do all this cool shit. Everybody, you're so good at what you do. So I wanted to write a solo record that was just like, if I suck, here it is, like it's just me and a guitar. It's the same type of shit that you like when I have a full band, but it's stripped down. And so I've been wanting to for years. I, heard certain records, Neil Young does it, where they like pull back and do something vulnerable. And I was like, that's so cool, but I'm just not good enough yet. And I don't think I was. But I finally, this January, recorded 4 songs, and I'd written them over the last few years, and they're super vulnerable and they're super stripped down, and so I'll be releasing that in May, and there's a lot of stuff to be pushing. Pleasures is working on a full length, Shitfire is working on a full length, Loam just finished recording a full length, like it's coming, and I want everyone to be looking out for all of it, but Bare My Bones is coming out in 2 months. And I think it's one of the most different things that I've subjected myself to in a while. I play shows all the time. I always say like, Cadillac Young solo shows are like the only time ever that I get nervous. I don't get nervous about anything. I've played big rooms to thousands of people, and and that's not a humble brag. I'm just saying, like, does not faze me. Fucking, I can play a room to 20 people, me and an acoustic guitar, and I'm fucking practicing my ass off for weeks. Not that I know leading into it, only 20 people are going to be here, but when I show up and there's only 20 people there, I'm fucking nervous as hell, because I want it to be good, and it's like only me. I can always blame, oh yeah, that set sucked, Luke dragged or something. Not that I do that, Luke, don't go thinking the wrong thing, but like when it's just me, there's no one to make excuses about. If I flub, it's because I didn't prepare or I wasn't good enough. So I'm really looking forward to this EP, and I'm looking forward to all the full band stuff too, but like this is just a neat thing for me. We're gonna do a release show May 15th at Cave Valley Kava. I don't know who else is going to be on it yet. Townsend Turner from Lexington will be on it for sure, playing solo, but I don't know locally. I've asked a few people. They're checking with their people, you know how that goes. I would say that would be the thing that I am excited about and hope people are looking out for.
Awesome. So you'll be performing the Bare Bones live on May 15th?
Yes, I'm gonna have the band with me, but I'm definitely gonna like at one point be like, all right, let me do, these 4 songs by themselves. And I already have full band versions demoed out. Like I love full band things, just the more I can add to something. But I'm gonna do that 15th is like the kickoff. It's the release, and then I'm gonna do a weekend solo, like 4 shows throughout the weekend regionally, where I'll play solo. So yeah, that the 15th will be maybe one of 4 times only that I really try to push performing the record as you hear it, because I like playing with a band more. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I feel you so much on like when it's just you, it completely changes. I oftentimes compare like people say, "Oh, you go on stage," and compare it to stand-up comedy and how different that is. Like how I can't imagine how terrifying. I mean, to me it is like just the difference between being a musician on stage by yourself or not.
Oh, yeah.
The song is written, and there's a time it starts, there's a middle, and then there's an end to the song, and it's structured.
Oh, yeah.
But with stand-up, it's so organic and dynamic on the spot. If you feel like a joke's not hitting, and you feel the room, it's not like it would be the equivalent as if you changed the whole set because you just felt like the vibes were off, or you felt like people weren't
I've definitely done
getting
that.
it. Yeah,
I've definitely done that.
That's a really good that's a very impressive thing to do, and be able to have like the songs to do that. Also, it's like this crowd's not feeling that, but I think that is fascinating. I'd love to hear more about that sometime. But yeah, when it's just you by yourself, you're not part of like a team anymore who's all got your back. Someone to log, it's redundant systems pretty much. If I mess up a little bit, I know everybody else is going to be on. If somebody else messes up a little bit, I know everybody else kind of help each other out the whole way to get to the end and have fun while doing it. Where when it's just you, it's just like, man, the buck stops with me.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's what makes it so impressive and so powerful to an audience member, musician or not. People know when it's just one person up there by themselves with an acoustic guitar, and they're still able to feel that raw feeling. They know that that's something really, really special and takes a lot of talent and skill to do.
Absolutely.
So I'm very much looking forward to seeing that on May 15th at Cave Valley Cava.
Hell yeah.
But Cadillac, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
It was an excellent conversation. I hope to have you back sometime.
Anytime. We don't live that far apart. So.
Yeah. But we can find you at Caddy Young 502 on Instagram and on Twitch as well. Is there any other place that you wish to be found?
If people want to look up all the projects I mentioned on streaming services, they're all there. But no, otherwise, I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I'm not doing anything worthwhile on there, So, TikTok. I don't know what my handle is. Probably Cadillac Young. That's the place I feel I get the most engagement that I like. I mean, Twitch obviously too, but I'm just not doing that as much right now. But when I post a TikTok and it hits, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Instagram, I kind of feel like it's like, the same, 40 something people always give me a like, and that's great. Thank you, those 40 people. But TikTok, it's a lot of new people and different folks. So that's the spot right now.
Gotcha. All right. So if we want to get to know you more or just find out about upcoming shows, we can go to TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah, I gotta, I should get better at promoting myself, obviously. But yes, that ideally from this moment forward, because I put it into ether, that would be the place to learn more about releases and shows and stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure. And
absolutely.
Until next time, my friend.
Thank you.